wait till the rest of the members get here, and the approval of the minutes until they get here. And on 0 Adams Street, sign Mylars, Mr.
We
Booth.
can't hear you.
Okay, I'll speak up. The reorganization of the board won't be held until later because all the board members are not here. Along with the approval of the minutes, we'll do the Zoning Board of Appeals agenda later. 0 Adams Street, to sign the Mylars, Mr. Bogan. Right.
So I called to get the link, and they said they actually had signed my.
Right. Right, so they've all been signed. I guess the only reason to come before the board is to make the board aware that they have been signed, and that's what you want to do. And so it's recorded and everything else.
I gave 2 copies to the building inspector this afternoon.
Okay.
So I think they have.
So we're all set.
Right,
Board
we do
members?
have one of those sheets that
I have copies here.
okay, no, yeah, I'll take one.
You want one? Yeah.
Yep. But one of the sheets is from September 13th, right? The corrections
Where
made
they're
on,
all-
because that's what the letter references, so I just want to make sure that
They're all, it's the September 2013, yeah.
Okay.
This is it's the rating and
Okay.
utility plan.
all right.
Great, we're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you can just get me a copy of the recording after you're done?
Sure.
Thank you.
Everything in the locker, right?
Deanne, site plan modification, final plan approval. Dave?
Yeah, is there anybody here for that?
That's me. We want to, let's see.
Over there,
Like
so the
this, fine.
camera can catch you.
How many grandchildren do you have now?
Youngest is 16.
Go ahead.
Good evening. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering, here tonight representing Deanne's Restaurant at 340 Center Street for a requested minor modification to the approved site plans for the project. You will recall we were before this board back in July of last year for a site plan to allow a proposed building to expand the facilities there. The board proposed to approve it. For some reason, and I don't know what that reason was, the original decision required some revisions to be made to the plan, and the plan to make its way back to the planning board. In speaking with Liz, I understand that plan never made its way back to the planning board, though it did get incorporated into the building permit set. There's a breakdown in communication somewhere. I don't know where it was. But those revisions were made to the plan. I did send those along with our request for modification to satisfy that requirement and then request a modification on top of that. So primary among those changes, I'll summarize them briefly as follows. The first is just to clean up notation regarding the building. There was a slight difference between the architectural plans and the dimensions of the building. The dimension of the proposed building, I think, was just off by like a foot from what was shown on those plans, so we corrected that. Originally on the approved site plans, the handicap parking stall was to be over here with a crosswalk that would bring handicap patrons into the building in the new addition. That has been changed. The layout of the addition has been tweaked slightly such that there will not be a handicap access here. So we've taken those handicap stalls, moved them to the opposite side of the parking lot where they are now, and those patrons will come along the natural path into the main entrance of the building right to the wake station. Aside from that, we've changed some of the parking accordingly. There was a dumpster that was proposed to be relocated, a shed that was proposed to be relocated to the dumpster pad. That shed has been removed. That's going away entirely. The dumpster pad has just gotten slightly bigger to accommodate both a trash and a recycling receptacle. The The other change, we had talked quite a bit in July about the ingress and egress to the project. The board had decided to leave all of the curb cuts open, but we were going to shorten the one closest to the building and make it a right turn only. On the plan as approved, we showed a bollard and chain to close that off. We've since revised that plan. We didn't like the bollard and chain. So there is existing curbing on the property with a short, picket designer fence that's just going to be extended. That landscape bed's going to be extended to close that off to the same 14-foot width that we decided on. Something a little bit more permanent to demarcate it. We did receive comments from Norwood Engineering. I got those this morning. I was out of the office on Friday when they came through. I don't see anything in here that I think is a major concern that we can't accomplish. There is some notation in the review letter about whether or not the handicap parking as shown meets the dimensional requirements. We can confirm that. We know that we have a little bit of room to adjust there, as is noted in the letter, so we're not worried about that. The other note that was in Norwood's letter, if I'm recalling correctly, was with accessing of the dumpster pad. In the original decision from July, required notation to be added to the plan noting when that would be accessed. We did add notation that the dumpster pad will not be accessed during business hours because it may be blocked by cars. It will have to be accessed during off-business hours. So that's it.
Dave?
As Eric said, we've reviewed the plan, and we don't have any problem with the majority of the modifications. I guess the questions we did raise had to do with the parking along the left side of the building. Because they are angle parking, Abington doesn't have any dimensional requirements for parking other than for 90-degree parking. And when you have angle parking, the stalls tend to get longer so that the rear ends of the cars don't stick out into the travel way. So we asked them to confirm the size of those spaces, and if they need to be increased, to decrease the aisle width. If you remember back from when this plan was approved, that is a one-way entrance to the site, so I believe that there's adequate area there to reduce the size of that travel way from, I think it's maybe at 24, 25 feet at this point, down to the width that's allowed under the bylaw for one-way direction. We raised a question about the dumpster and adequacy to that. The parking spaces along the left side of the building are only scaling at about 14 feet, and so they don't meet the 18-foot requirement. So again, I think that the aisle width up there is substantially greater than what is needed for one way, so we're suggesting that they strike those at 18 feet. I wasn't aware that there was a note on the plan. Was it currently on there, or was added about the off hours?
Let me say this, I will confirm that it is on the plan and make sure it is. In reviewing the decision, I came across it, so I will double check and make sure that that is on the plan.
And the final thing is we reiterated again, in our opinion, that the middle curb cut should be eliminated to facilitate access and egress to the site rather than having 3 curb cuts on 123. That middle curb cut should be eliminated. And that's really the board's decision. As I understand it, they made that decision previously to leave that there. But again, our opinion is that it should be eliminated. Other than that, they've addressed the concerns that were in our letter when we did the original review back in 2018, I guess. July 2018.
Yeah, the reason that we have you're going to continue to leave the curb cut there next to the building, and that was for the fire department to get in and out.
That was for emergency access because it gives them a direct U right around.
Right.
What Dave's talking about is closing off this one in the middle here because there's 3 in a row.
Correct.
But what we had determined is, I believe my recollection when we were here before, we had some discussion about that. The board, I think, actually felt it was better to leave it open because it gave more egress options. We know that that intersection up here gets a little tight sometimes.
Since that meeting, we did go out with the DOT and Old County Planning Council and everything else, and I guess it's a major accident point. because what happens is it's 2 lanes. In fact, some consideration was to make that Road 123 headed toward Brockton to be one lane rather than 2.
Okay.
Because what happens is when people want to egress from the restaurant out onto 123, either to take a right or to take a left, the first lane of traffic will stop and let that car out, and inevitably, a car coming along on the passing lane whacks right into them. And there's more accidents there, I guess, than there is on 58 and 123.
Really?
And that's the reason that the board sort of changed its mind a little bit, but we did authorize the 2 of them before.
Okay.
So it's certainly something that the owners should look at, because obviously a good customer, you don't want to see leave and get in an accident. And that's what the problem, and I don't know, Bruce, have you heard anything more about that traffic study?
No, we got the final report. It was a road safety audit we did at that intersection. And I think I could find, have you seen the final copy of the RSA?
I haven't.
Okay, we'll make sure that you get a copy of the final copy of the road safety audit,
Sure.
because I think that would be good for you to have, for the traffic issues at that
Sure, I
intersection.
think that makes sense. We're glad to take a look at that. And it doesn't sound like an unreasonable request. I'm glad to bring it back to the owner and have a discussion about it. And
First
try to take it from
curve
there,
is
and if
right
need be,
turn
come back to this board with another slight
Right,
modification.
I know the
that's what
chief's,
that's what
the fire
plan
chief,
has.
did you have any comments
It's
on
the
that, on
second and
that
third,
accident
which are right
Well, I
situation?
actually concur with what you said, Wayne. We did keep that first one open so we can get that loop. And I do know that in Bruce, there was a traffic study with the question of cars pulling out, and the second lane is really what was being.
Right, but if you want to go, if you want to go east on 123,
As long as we have the access to the first one, I defer to the traffic study.
But Chief, we should have sent you a copy of that RSA, acronyms, road safety audit. I'll make sure, I'll check with Bill McNulty and transportation guys and make sure that you got that, but we'll make sure that you guys get that.
Yeah, if I can get a copy of that, I'd love to take a look at it.
What they thought they might do is, because there's a left-hand lane there, what they might do is make it 1, and then when it gets by the driveways, to make it 2.
Just
That was,
swing it out that way.
yeah, so that's, I don't know what'll happen, but it's something of concern.
Okay.
Right.
Does that leave us where we were? I mean, the first entrance, not talking about the one-way, but the first entrance, you're going to put a fence in front of.
Yeah, right now, traditionally, this has been open, so you can take either a left or a right out of here.
Right, but isn't that, we're not leaving that open for the fire department anymore?
We're gonna leave it open, but we're gonna reduce it to a 1 lane, so it's exit only, and you just take the left, as you're coming out, you'll take the right and head toward the intersection from here. So if you had to come out of here, if we close this, and you have to come out of this parking lot, the only way that you're taking a left is on this last aisle here. Which I think was part of the discussion that we had before, is that it might get confusing to patrons and result in some congestion interior to the parking lot. So what I might suggest, if we can take a look at that road safety audit and see what makes some sense from there, we can get back, with something a little bit more in depth on the egress.
It also gets you, by closing the middle one, gets you further away from the intersection.
It does.
Enforcing that out. Because right now, there's actually 4 curb cuts
There are.
on that one piece of property.
And I think this went in long before curb cuts were highly regulated.
Yeah. That close to the intersection, so.
Yeah, it's not an unreasonable thing to look at. So.
We talked about that in a road safety audit, about the fact that there was the 4 curb cuts there, and probably should be addressed.
Yeah, it's something that we're glad to take a look at.
The road safety audit was done after this was approved, correct?
Right, that's correct. Any other comments?
Yeah, 4 curb cuts it's absurd for that property. We're not talking a massive frontage. And it's not your fault, the other owner's fault. It's how it's evolved over the years. But I think I voted back originally when we did this that we needed to close at least one of them, if not 2 of them, but at least one of them. So I'll definitely go back on that.
So I think what my primary concern is with curb, like I said, closing the middle curb cut, is it only leaves us one place to come out. What I'd like to do is have my traffic engineers take a look at it. Perhaps, just thinking out loud, it makes more sense to close the middle curb cut, but open this one back up and let it be a left or a right-hand turn out of there if you're getting rid of one of the curb cuts. So if we can agree to take a look at it before a certain point and move forward with what we have tonight, we appreciate it.
Any other comments, Dave?
No, I think if they want to look at that, that might be an option of bringing that back to two-way and eliminating, that might be a good.
That makes some sense. We certainly don't.
Moves the curb cuts as far away as possible. The curb cut going in is one way, so there's not a conflict there with people coming out.
Right.
And I think that might be a good solution, because I think that last curb cut to the east would get you most of the time past the backup of the traffic, so you wouldn't have what you were talking about, and the RSA talks about, with that second lane not wanting to stop.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I would just like to take a little bit of a further look at it before we commit to it, if that's agreeable.
Okay, all set? Fine. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Motion to approve the modifications, which is the handicap spots being moved, the 1-foot addition to the building, and the pad, the trash pad, and removing the existing building.
So moved with the addition that they come back to discuss the curb cuts on the property.
The motion's made.
Well, we need to make sure that we have in the motion, this reflects Norwood Engineering's letter of May 30th.
Okay. You're seconding that motion?
Yes.
Anything further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Thank you all for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you. Topics.
And this one we did.
Give my best to Ann.
Request for fill at 167 Randolph Street continued. Mr. Garvey? Go ahead. Yes. It's a continued hearing on 167 Randolph Street.
Kyle Garvey, Cedar Garvey Company, representing Fleet, owner of 167 Randolph Street, in which the project had fill added to the rear of the property. On that plan, you'll see a dotted area that shows the area that was filled, and it continued at about from the middle of the backyard at the elevation 134 contour all the way down to the 120, roughly the 129 contour. We've done a topography of the site, and we took quite a few shots, and we matched the existing grade on the west and east of the property. And in so doing, we...
Can you excuse me for a minute, Kyle? How many people here on that? Right. You haven't got a plan to look at, right? So, yeah, why don't you look at the plan?
Thank you.
Everything on the property basically slopes from east to either from the middle of the lot towards the west and or towards the east on the other side. That has been the condition of that property for some time. He has raised that area. So what we've done is we've created a swale in the middle of the property. In these particular areas here, that any runoff will be swaled towards the middle of the property. We're showing you the drainage flow direction. We're also creating a small swale on each side that gets it to the rear of the wooded area in the back. I was able to get copies of the the sewer plans that were done for the town of Abington for Randolph Street, which it only shows the first 100 feet back, but you can see that it's also at elevation 134, which is, it's this side here, and at 100 feet back, it's 134, and if you look at the same spot, it's still in that area. So everything, as you can see on that plan, the natural contours, the swale was down, on each side was down the property line, and that's consistent with what's happening today.
Put it out of it.
So I guess he is here for a permit for more than, was it 100 yards and it appears that it's closer to 200, 250 in that area, maybe, based on the counts I've done.
Yeah.
But what we've tried to do is take consideration of the neighbors and try to keep a swale going down to the rear. Quite a bit of this area in the back is still a wooded site, and it'll drain back there. It eventually then goes out towards the river in the back. And I think that was it Ryder Properties, the old Bay State kind of borders that. French's, I mean, the Shumatsuscan River is out there, so.
How's this feel?
So presently, what, the change, oh, let them talk.
It was raised about 4 to 5 feet,
Are
and
there any
now,
questions of the board?
I do have, I saw that, I could see the natural swales that happen between the two properties, and the houses are far enough forward that it looks like pretty much anything you do really would just run off down the back. But my question is that, are these existing grades you're showing what is out there right now? Mm-hmm. Okay, because that's, and there's gonna be more fill brought in.
No
more fill, right?
No more fill?
No.
No.
This is just
No,
great.
I'm actually cutting this into creating a swale in here. It's 131, and it's going to be 131. So this is actually comes up a few feet. The drainage will go 90 degrees to the contour, so the drainage will go this way.
Gotcha.
If you look, I've also, we did a lot of shots out there, as you can, edge of fill is, this, at the woods is 129, here it's 139.56.
Yeah.
So you have a grade out here of a 132, so you're saying, yeah, well, you brought in 2 feet of fill, because it's really matching, matching the grade at the edge of fill.
Oh, I see, okay.
Okay, so you can see, this is a spot shot that we took, so here's 132.
And this used to go somewhere like that.
Yeah, so you can see where the shots were over here, and,
higher than it.
That's what we couldn't determine last week, because we were looking at grades of the fill. That was, we wanted to see what it was
Swale,
prior to the fill being
yeah, I mean,
placed.
here's 128, 128.8 in the back.
This will
So you
go
know the
down
most,
this way. Water will go down.
we know that it went from, this is
This is gonna be the lowest point.
134 at the edge of the fill, which matches
Here, out to
that.
there.
It's pretty,
In addition to that,
it's right on the money.
put a swale
So we know that
along
it always went
this-
from 134 to
this side
128.
And this side
Just a
here,
matter of,
so that
I have
water will
no
stay
knowledge if it
properly
dropped
and water
down
coming off
4
the
feet,
front.
and then if it went out, but
Go in this
it
swale.
still went from 134 to roughly 129, and
No,
that's
but
the
I mean,
grade.
any water that's.
Yeah, I think
And I'm
both
just trying to
neighbors-
reduce any
Yeah.
runoff going to abutting neighbors.
In other words, there'd be no.
No, I didn't think
water
that's
on
the
this
correction we
property.
were kind of looking for.
What about the...
But that, and also to show that you weren't,
That-
wanted to know how
they're not
different it was. But
touching
it
that.
looks like from your neighbors that they all shared a similar
Haven't put it in
topography
yet, right?
prior to you filling it in, the way they
Oh,
sloped
you're
out.
putting that up. Anything else?
What I basically was looking at it, two things I agree with is that there's some natural swale, shallow, but between the two properties, and properties all have a similar profile where they slope off real fast out to the back. And there's a fence along one side. But the the question was, originally, were the grades that they were showing here the fill grades, or what was the original grades? And these indeed are the fill grades that they're showing, but we were just looking at them, that it's essentially, well, essentially what we were looking for is what he did here. He concaved the center,
The center of the lawn, yeah.
yeah, the line, you know,
Right,
to make a swale down the
drain,
middle of the
everything
property.
From the sides will come in there, that's on his property.
Right.
Yeah. And then also there'll be a swale on either side of the end, that any water that's coming from the abutter's property will go in that swale. Right?
Yeah.
The present contours now create drainage this way. We're showing proposed, so it goes down the middle.
Right.
So we're taking that hump out and swaling it in the middle and letting it go to the back. And as I was just explaining to Jeff, you can see the existing, the grade that was at the existing fill is 130.56.
Yeah.
Now you have a 132 out here, so you know basically that's how much went in there.
Right.
The same here, 129. These are all shots.
Right.
These out here are in the natural woodland, but
Right.
these are the edge of fill at the abutters or at the natural grade. So, so what we're trying to do is just, you know, not add any water to these other properties.
Right.
I mean, it will be loamed and seeded, it'll be a lawn. I mean, it's
Right.
not like what he's paving or anything like that.
And there was a vernal pond down at the end, a vernal area down there. Has that been filled at all?
No, it's still there.
It's actually ground at, it's actually on the Pickering's property.
No, that's not property.
Well, there's I mean, I just have ground at water back here. It looked like there was something there, but it's not a vernal pool per conservation, because it's not a registered vernal pool. It's not on a website.
Dirt was pushed into it with the steam shovel, and that's affected the whole back strip of my land.
Is this last rain, was it, you're finding a stream or so? What are you finding inside
The
there?
land is saturated. When you step on the grass, your foot sinks right in. I mean, any one of you can come over and look at it, please, if you want to. It's hard to explain. It's total saturation, and it wasn't like that before. And then you can see how dirt was pushed into the vernal pool, and that upset the water balance at that corner. I think maybe 1 foot of it's my land. My land is exactly where the wooden fence is, and then it becomes a chain link fence that was put in at an angle because of the vernal pool at the end.
Well, what they're showing in the grades, I'm not sure what, that I didn't look at the details
They're
along
not
the edge.
going that far back.
Yeah, I mean, we did extensive topography for this whole lot. We took close to 100 elevations. And my job was to find out what he did, and it's, I mean, and what we've done is we've taken, based on the shots, right now you are gonna get more runoff off that site because there's no grass or loam, it hasn't been loamed or seeded. It's just a bare surface, it's almost like a pavement. And you are gonna get more runoff there than if it's loamed and seeded. I mean, it's like any other lawn. You know.
It's a little hard to predict what's going to happen in the future, but the way what you've got out there now makes sense, that the water's just going off in different directions. But what they've got showing here, Dan showed you, is that they're now keeping more water. There's probably more water staying on their site now than originally was, by the way they're doing the swale. The only thing that could possibly be detrimental to you is, I don't know whether or not you've been compacting that soil when it was filling, because it could sink considerably.
Yeah, it was never compacted, you just had it.
You just dumped.
Yeah.
And Carl can give you some.
Wayne, if I,
Yeah.
sure. I know, so, I mean, this is the sewer plan, you can see that
That can
these,
drop 3 inches.
these contours, all the water's sloping at 90 degrees
Still go,
to the,
yeah.
to the contour, you know, so it's all
Here's the other
sloping
problem, this had the rainiest spring
towards
in
the
history.
abutting
Or
property.
the third
So
rainiest
this is
spring
an
in history.
aerial that was taken when they did this.
And that followed the
Town
third
Abington.
rainiest fall
So
in
we-
history.
There's always been a
But
swale.
I've seen a lot of backyards
and
kind
shoves it down
of
the-
fail
down
on the
the
front
property
doing
line.
one of these things.
Now, we're
It's too
taking that
soft.
and we're actually reducing
The
it.
topography will go read through. The hump will show through.
I mean, I just think for the board's insurance, you may want us to do, when he's done, do an as-built plan just showing that it is.
I think that would be appropriate.
That was gonna be my question, who's gonna do the final grades? You've got somebody that's gonna do them already?
Yes, sir. Any other information, Amy?
Well, I did what our client here did what we wanted him to do, Carl. He had you come out, and so we now know what the land looks like. We didn't know that before, now we do.
Is there anything else, Ms. Pickering? Anything? No?
The 3 lots are similar, everything goes to the
Let me
back.
show you what he's
Oh, yeah,
proposing.
absolutely,
It should
yeah.
work for you. It should work.
Be any worse.
So,
No, no, but see,
I know.
see, it's now just,
Yeah.
there's no way of it being absorbed into the ground as well, so you're getting just like a, with the right now, you're just getting a runoff. When they go and seed it, it should be good.
So in that case, I'll close the public hearing. Motion to close the public hearing. Second. Made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
If someone would like to make a motion to approve with the stipulation that we have a as-built plan and they come back before this board.
So moved.
You should be all right.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Is there anything more discussion on 0 Chestnut Street tonight? There's all these people here.
Wait, let me get this done and then we'll go to that.
0 Summer Street or 0 Chestnut?
Excuse me, 0 Summer.
They haven't opened that yet.
You haven't opened yet? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
The request that we have to bring in fill at 466 Plymouth Street.
So I sent the 19 out, 15.
Just get them. Yeah, when they're send them to me. Thank you.
I have with me tonight, these are just small plans that have volume calculation on them. They're plans that you're looking at before you now. They're 2 separate plans. They look similar, but they're not 2 separate.
You got both of them.
I had 6. You don't mind sharing? Sorry. And I got an extra one. Somebody might be missing one here. Lot 3. Those 2 plans. Yeah. Nope, that's a double of lot 3. There should be one for lot 2 and one for lot 3.
He's got both of them.
I got both of them.
Yeah.
Two driveways?
I might have had,
Is that three?
yeah, well,
Plymouth Street.
No, you get an extra.
there we go.
Those there? Those there? I'm going to that house.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jeff Coleman with SciTech Engineering, here tonight with Jim Rock, the applicant, the fill material permit that was submitted to the board. The two lots that we have shown here off of, they're listed off of Plymouth Street, but they're actually off of Central. When these lots were created back in 2017, I think the A&R plan was endorsed by the board in March of 2017. We were not aware of the fill material permit application. I think that was adopted the year prior, back in 2016.
It's a bylaw, it's been on the books for a number of years.
Has it?
Yeah, right. The only difference was that the selectmen had control over it, and then it went to the planning board. That was the only change.
So they changed it in 2016 to the
They
planning board?
just changed it from the selectmen observation to the
Okay.
planning board, but nothing changed at that point.
All right, well, we apologize for that, but what we have is, we have two plot plans that were submitted to the building department, which we obtained building permits for. These plans have also been reviewed before the zoning board of appeals, because this property is in the floodplain wetlands protection district. We did petition to the zoning board of appeals for the special permit exemption, because this is an area that's shown in the, I think it was 1977 flood map of the town.
65. 1965.
65, but it's not actually in a floodplain on current FEMA maps. So the plot plans that were submitted to the building department were submitted to the zoning board of appeals for review. They went through it pretty thoroughly, the grading design and stuff like that on these lots at that time. Just to quickly go over what we have on these two lots. Yeah, oh yes, yeah, and they were reviewed by conservation. They're on the wetlands, within 100 feet of this property, but conservation did also sign off on the building permit. So basically what we have is we're showing, and then the other permit that was granted, we did get a variance on the driveway for Lot 3 to come in off of Central Street. The frontage on that particular lot, again, is off of Plymouth Street, but in order to make access to the site better, because it's a little bit busier down on Plymouth Street, we decided to petition the zoning board of appeals to let us come in from Central Street, which... What's that?
The neighbors also requested.
Well, yeah, we petitioned, and the neighbors were kind of on board with it. Everybody, specifically the neighbors to the east, I'm sorry, to the west, were happy with that, as opposed to coming in from Plymouth Street. So what you see on the plans that are before you tonight is, there is a little bit of grading associated with the driveway, just to kind of smooth that out. There's nothing major. We're just keeping the grade pretty consistent from Central Street, going back to where the individual houses will be located. And then, because we do have a high water table on this site, that's one of the reasons, or probably the main reason, that Jim decided to go with raised ranches here. It was to get out of that water table. There is a little bit of fill that's required around the foundation. And we tried to keep it as tight as we could in the vicinity of the foundation. But basically, that's, most of the earthwork that we're showing here has to do with the actual construction of the dwelling. And, it's all probably within, I'd say, 50 feet of the actual foundation wall. But, what I did was, after Jim had filed for the application, I did run a volume calculation today for both properties. As you can see on these plans, it's included right below the north arrow. On Lot 2, with the grading that was shown on the plan, there's about 836 cubic yard of fill required for that particular site. And then on Lot 3, again, based on the grading that we had on the approved plan, there was 722 cubic yards of fill on that site. So in total, there's just over 1,500 cubic yards for the two properties that we're showing on the plan that would be required to complete the project. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
That's a lot of fill.
Yeah, it's a lot of fill, but when you look at the actual plans, on paper, again, there's minor regrading. I mean, we're talking about, there's one driveway that's about 500 feet long, another one's just under 300 feet for Lot 2. So there was some minor regrading in there. At the entrance, where most of the grading for the driveway is, adjacent to Central Street, the applicant owns both properties on either side. So, if there's anybody that's going to be impacted by this, it's going to be his own property. But when you look at the grading there, there's no area where we're bringing it up any more than maybe a foot or so in those areas. It's not like we're filling in 3 or 4 feet in any given location, other than maybe a couple of feet around the foundation. And that's strictly due to the presence of the groundwater, how high the water table is. There is drainage in place on this particular site. There's a catch basin located just to the west which would be the property boundary for Lot 3 and the existing dwelling at 466 Plymouth Street. That would collect all the runoff from this site. There's no runoff that's being directed to any abutting properties. The site in general drains north to south, and additionally with a slight grade going from east to west towards that catch basin. We are not changing the runoff patterns on the property. That's all going to be maintained. So all the runoff from this particular site is going to end up, whatever was going towards that catch basin previously is still going to go to that catch basin. We're not discharging any runoff onto abutting properties or any additional runoff. Again, if you look at the grading that was shown on there, other than, again, 50 feet around the foundation wall, it's all minimal. It's all probably within less than a foot, the existing grade that's out there. I think it's just because of the length of the driveways associated with this project, the presence of a high water table on this property. I really can't see any other way to design it without the amount of fill that we're proposing. I don't think we're asking for anything more than what's needed on the site.
Just so I understand the plan, you have 2 driveways next to each other?
Correct.
How much space is in between them?
I don't have them side by side. I think it was 6 feet or so.
And so there's an easement going from one over one to get to the other?
That's correct.
All right. Where's the low spot on this area?
The low spot would be, well, if you look at the proposed 105 contour, it's about 100, maybe a little bit less than 100 feet in from Central Street to the east, to the west of the driveway to Lot 3. That's kind of a low spot on, the area that we're working. The low spot, the catch basin that's currently on property, the rim elevation there is 103.88. So all the runoff from the, all the runoff from the driveways, all the way from Central Street, all the way back to where these houses are going, is going to be directed to towards that catch basin.
Who owns that catch basin?
Well, that's a good question. It's on private property.
Pavement, that's a lot of pavement.
It's on private property, and I do not believe there is an easement in place for that drainage system. As far as I know, I haven't found anything on record that would indicate that there is.
Do we know if it runs into the sanitary sewer system? Or?
No,
The history that I have on it is my grandfather, who was a former head of the DPW in the town at one point in time, he built that drain, and basically what you're getting is there's the Central Street, it goes to that manhole, it proceeds whatever direction this is, towards the St. Bridget's parking lot, goes underneath St. Bridget's parking lot, underneath the railroad tracks, and dispenses somewhere back out there. on the other side of the railroad track, somewhere I would believe in the cemetery area or somewhere along there. That's what I was always told.
I guess my concern's not so much down there, but the 1, 2, 3, 4 houses, and how the grades from this project affects the backs of those. Are these existing grades, what you're showing us here? Is it proposed
Well,
grades?
they're both.
Is it-
The solid line is a proposed grade, the dashed line is an existing grade, the runoff,
So you went out and shot these recently,
yes,
these grades?
yes. Yeah, we did a topographic survey of the whole site before doing the plot plans.
Recently, I mean, these grades, you went out within the last, whatever, after all the fill was brought in and did these grades that I'm
No.
looking at?
No,
That's all.
no, but if it's built according to plan, the runoff would simply, and any runoff from these houses here would go to the west side of the driveway, and then the slope there is consistent along, it goes to the south, so it would go along the driveway and work its way down to the catch basin. It would run obviously perpendicular to the existing grade,
Have you been out to the site recently?
not within the past month or so.
So if you went out there right now and looked at it, it's, a lot of fill was brought in there, and it appears to be quite a bit higher than all them houses, the way it is right now.
Well, the fill that's been brought in there was piled up because it needed to be dried out. That's being dispensed and used for the driveway. That's not the final grade, and that fill was just piled up there.
Well, that's how this all started, truckload after truckload after truckload was being brought in there, and that's how this all started. So I guess my concern is that the houses, and that everything flows back down to that way when it's finished.
When it's all graded out, it'll all be, there'll be a swale there that runs right to the catch basin. I mean, if one of your concerns is, I'm not sure who owns this house, but this house here, there used to be the house of the Windsor's house.
Yep.
If that's one of your concerns.
All of them.
Well, I'm just, so 50-some-odd years ago, when I was, the Windsors sold off the back part of their loom and land, and anytime it rains, there's water there. So, there'll be, the final grade will show a swale that goes this whole length here, and everything drains this way.
And we can certainly prepare an as-built plan, once all the grading is complete, so that the board's, happy with the way it has been graded. So that the drainage is going in the proper direction.
What's the average water table height? Do you know? I don't mean as a trick question. I'm just-
No, but it's, you're 24 to 30 inches.
It's a wet area, it's always been a wet area.
Well, it's flat farmland.
Right.
Good if they could put like a crushed stone.
I guess the question is, what's going to happen when it's completed? And perhaps, as we did in the last one, have an as-built plan to the planning board at the conclusion, showing exactly what's happening. And if at that point, we feel that the water's going on the other property, that a French drain needs to be put in there or something to prevent any more water going onto their property than it presently exists.
Yeah, that's no problem. And again, on the design plan, we weren't showing a pronounced swale along the driveway just because the grade naturally goes that way, but certainly, during construction, just on the west side of the driveway to Lot 3, it doesn't have to be anything, it doesn't have to be deep by any means or anything, but just something to direct the water down to that catch basin. It seems simple enough to do in the field when they're doing the grading for the driveway, and we can certainly prepare an as-built to show that once it's completed.
Is there anyone here that wants to speak on that? If the board would want to make a motion like that, we could. if you wish. Yes, sir. Could someone close that door out there, please?
It is wet. I actually just have some frames put in my basement because of that little water, not because of this construction, but just because of the way that we can tell you the water table, the water table is a foot under my basement. So that's some good stuff. But, so anything to mitigate it would be appreciated.
Anything else?
So essentially, when this is done, it's basically gonna take, obviously, I think Windsor's is lower than the other three, but it's gonna take whatever water's in the back and back down towards that catch basin.
Correct. And any water that would be coming from the applicant's property, I mean, we can extend it down to this rear line and just run it all the way over here to intercept any water that would be heading down in that direction, that would be heading to the west, and just direct it to the catch basin.
And the amount of fill that's come in there so far is 1,578 yards, and no more is expected.
No, that's just evaluating the proposed contours I had shown on my design plan as opposed to the existing contours that were there before the project was started. I think what's been brought out there is a little bit less than that. Might be around 1,200 cubic yards, some of that being loam, some of that being fill. I want to say there was, I don't know if it was 700 yards of loam and then like 400 to 500 yards of fill. So there may be a little bit more that's required. If we're going to be excavating, you know, a little bit in this area to get that swale in to work, you know, that might save a little bit, but there may be a little bit more that needs to be brought in when it's all set.
What we need to know is how many yards are going to be brought in, I guess, and that's what, what we'd be given the.
Yeah, I would say that the maximum would be that 1578 that you had mentioned.
So, someone would like to make a motion to approve up to 1578, and that an as-built plan comes before the planning board at the conclusion to satisfy the movement of water, and if not, it needs to get changed to make it work.
Right, I mean, right now with these contours, it looks pretty flat all the way across.
Right.
From the backyards, so.
And it may require,
Close.
a French drain or something like that to stop that water from, I don't know. Obviously, you've got groundwater involved also.
I think the concern that the board has, which is a legitimate concern, is the runoff coming from, because we are raising the grade around these foundations, being directed onto the abutting property to the west. Will certainly, put in that swale 6 inches to a foot deep to intercept that water heading west from the back of those. I don't know that a French drain would be required for that purpose. I think that the swale would certainly work.
Got a lot of paved area there, though, that's all paved area.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So that's impervious, so if you had some crushed stone and a French drain there going down.
Yeah, once you get beyond Lot 2, the house for Lot 2, then it's just a 12-foot wide driveway, which would be basically behind 3 of the properties that we're talking, 3 of the 4 that we're talking about. So I'm very confident a swale would be adequate in there. To put in a French drain, I think ultimately what we might be doing is intercepting groundwater and then bringing it to the surface, which I think we don't want to do.
Yeah.
I think that would cause more problems than solving.
Well, I'd make the motion of a shorter version of what you'd say, but including that extra swale to the air.
Motion made.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just request that you keep in mind the rules about keeping the streets clean as you're pulling in and out of the properties. However many trucks you have to bring in there, just make sure we're not leaving big clumps of dirt in the public roadways as you're leaving.
On the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
and on the bringing in 1,578 cubic yards of fill. Motion on that.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. For 1,500.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone here from, on the Winterwood subdivision off Dale Street? Huh? Yeah. 620, motion to, I want to leave the board for this 620 public hearing site review plan on 0 Summer Street. Bruce, and then to return after that hearing.
Chair? But, yeah, for the most part,
Okay, it being 7 o'clock, we're going to open the public hearing and site plan review and special permit, 0 Summer Street. Chairman Smith has stepped down. I'm Bruce Hughes. I'm the vice chair. And I'm going to read the public hearing notice. Okay, I'll try to speak. I'm speaking into the mic too, I'm sorry. Okay, all right, I'll use my public speaking voice. Is that, okay, very good. Okay, this is a public hearing notice. The Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 6, 2019, at 6:20 PM on the application of Abington Crossing LLC submitted by Shamrock Development Associates Incorporated, 288 Grove Street, Braintree, Mass. 02108, and Abington Crossing LLC, P.O. Box 890087, Weymouth, Mass. And I'm not going to read the zip code, for the site plan approval pursuant to the Town of Abington zoning bylaw, Chapter 175, Section 77, and a special permit application pursuant to zoning bylaw, Chapter 175, Chapter 37C, for the development of 165 residential units at 0 Summer Street, Assessors Map 24, Lot 112, and Map 17, Lot 11, located in the Transit-Oriented Development District. Applicant is also requesting a special permit pursuant to zoning bylaw, Chapter 175, Section 37D1, reduction of parking and relief from side yard buffer requirements pursuant to zoning bylaw, Chapter 175, Chapter 37B, 166 and 67, and setback requirements pursuant to zoning bylaw, Chapter 175, 37C, C3. Property is owned by Abington Crossing LLC, P.O. Box 890087, Weymouth, Mass. The property is located at 0 Summer Street on Assessor's Map 24, Lot 112. Plans can be viewed at the Town Office. Wayne Smith, Chair, April 22nd, 2019, and April 29th, 2019. Liz, do we have any public, letters of comment?
That's from the chief, so it starts down there.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to read a letter in the record from Peter Pavalos. He's the MBTA Director of Transit-Oriented Development. Hello. Please be advised that any third-party development within 30 feet of an MBTA property line might be subject to a license agreement with the MBTA prior to issuance of a building permit and prior to any activity with potential to impact the right-of-way. This may include site investigations, tree clearings, and site borings. Please visit, and they have the website. We can make that available. Thank you, Peter Parvellos, Director, MBTA Transit-Oriented Development, Capital Delivery, State Transportation Building, Boston.
I have a letter here from Marshall Adams and Building Inspector, Zoning Enforcement Officer. The applicant, Marshall's comment is, the applicant appears to have applied correctly. And the fire chief. And Chief, did you have any comments, Chief Nuttall?
After their presentation.
Okay. All right. So we've read the public hearing notice and the letters. I guess I'd ask the applicant to come forward and do the presentation, please.
Is the presentation recorded?
Is this being recorded?
Yes. You're on television.
It is.
That's why we're all dressed up tonight. So.
Can I just ask a question?
A remote mic?
Liz?
Yes.
Do you have a list of who received notification for this?
The abutters list?
Yeah.
And while she's looking for that, could I just ask what the requirements are for notification?
You'd have to ask somebody in the assessor's office.
Because it would appear to me that something as big as this would not go by 100-foot abutters requirement, since it would impact so many people on Summer Street, as well as all of the people who commute and use the commuter rail, as well as all the people who live in Abington. It's a rather
Take one of them off the
deal
table.
with not very much notification.
Does this one work? I don't know. That one might be wireless. Check that one out.
I think this one's wireless. I don't think it's on, though.
Let's see, abutters
Hello?
list. And that's his application.
Hello?
Or just when he goes back.
1, 2, 3. I'll talk loud.
Wait a
How's that?
Kid's right there, you're on.
I can't? It's working? Okay. All right.
He's
Hello?
looking at the abutters, I'm sorry, the abutters list is determined by the Board of Assessors. So you would have to ask down in the assessor's office how they determine who gets it. Planning board doesn't determine that, the assessors do.
Okay, my name is John Iredale. I'm the owner of a company called the Karsten Company, and we are developers. I bought this site in 2006, a long time ago, when there was no sewage and there was no water. And I always think it's good to hear from the owner and what the vision is and the plan of the whole concept that we have. Because it's about the only time I get to talk. After this, it's all consultants and architects and engineers, and you'll get to see, what the plan's about and, how it came about and all that good stuff. But I always think it's nice to talk a little bit about who I am and what, where I, why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I got my start. So I moved to Massachusetts in 1980. I was a salesperson working for the O'Brien Partition Company, and a little company called the Lee Kennedy Company asked me to come work for them. There was 4 people. They're now a $400 or $500 million a year company. After 2 years, I left them. I came there with the promise that I would make, they would double my salary. I was making $25,000 a year. They were paying me $50,000. I went out of the basement of my house in Howes Neck and Quincy, if you know Quincy or Howes Neck, and I immediately went down to $14,000, and I stayed there for a while. And because I was in sales, I sent out a flyer to a little to a sneaker company in Brighton, and the guy picked it up and he says, "Look, I'm growing pretty fast. I'd like, I need some help." And that was New Balance, and I stayed with New Balance and did their work. Distribution centers, the clock tower up in Lawrence, we renovated. So I spent my career as a general contractor. So from New Balance, I then did all the dorms over at Boston College, did a lot of work at Northeastern, did a lot of work at, you name it. We renovated it, we did it, retail space, just an awful lot. And why that's important is that when I grew up in the building business. I grew up as a general contractor. I started from literally nothing. My father was an Episcopal minister. I came here, I didn't know a soul, and I started my company, and we started to move. In 2008, after we'd bought this property with some friends, the economy went to trash, and it just died on us.
And that was, you know, that was hard. So we've carried this property that we paid $1 million for way back when. And we did it because it was a transit-oriented development. And the bylaws are very clear, the zoning is very clear about what we can do and what's needed. So I just finished, if you know Plymouth at all, I just finished a 42-unit development down there across the street from the East Bay Grill. It's 42 units. It's on a little less than a 2-acre site. And we developed that project, and the town loves it. And the reason is that it brings people to the area where they need to be. So if you have restaurants and shops, you need people in a denser area. And that's what the whole TOD bylaw and zoning process is for. So it's why we bought the property, and it's how you bring one, tax relief, and also people to an area that can support it. So imagine, if you will, you know, my vision here is that, you know, you're driving, you want to pick up, you live there, you've got your dry cleaners there, you've got your, you might have a daycare, we might have a daycare there, there might be a coffee shop, you hop on the train and you head into Boston. And at night, you know, you might decide to go out to dinner and support one of the local restaurants. That's the whole vision on this property. It is, you know, I know some people are going to say, oh, it's too dense, it's this, and so forth and so on, and I think I'll leave that to the architects and the lawyers and everybody else to kind of figure that out. But it's really what TOD is all about, and it's why we invest in properties that are at a location where we can add purpose and meaning and change lives and help people. And I think that this is what that project is for. I'm happy to give my card to anybody here, to talk to anybody, to, you know, call me up. I'm happy to talk to you, and hopefully you'll like what you see as the architect presents the boards. I think it's a pretty project. It's beautiful. It's the same architect that designed the town hall, and so he's well known here in Abington. And I've always liked this town hall. You're over there, Sevy. So it's yeah, and I think you'll like. I think we've got plenty of buffer, you know, around the area there, so that the people on Progress Street don't feel like, you know, we're right on top of them. Yeah. So we'll get to that. So at this point, I think I'll let Sevy talk about the project, and then the civil engineer talk about the stormwater management. And feel free to reach out to me, and I look forward to being a vital part here in Abington. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, John. I'm Sevy Strikolowski Architecture in Hingham. I think this is on.
No? It's just for
It's on for the camera.
It's just for the camera, it's not for the room amplification.
Okay. This is a kind of project that is an opportunity to fulfill what we see as a vision the town had in creating a transportation-oriented development, to design a village with a variety of housing, with mixed use, so that it's got transportation, it's got daycare, it has a community center, it's a variety of buildings, not a repetition of cookie-cutter building types, but I think you can see that it's a kind of little village cluster around a four-story residential building with a ground floor that's community use, retail use, and daycare. So an all-day-long kind of activity. The way we've designed the housing, different types. There's housing within the more compact mixed-use building. There's housing with yards. We try to maintain the village feel of houses that don't have a lot of cars parked in front of them. We've kept the traffic out of the neighborhood and created little cul-de-sacs of each cluster of housing and uses, so that there's a sense of a neighborhood street rather than a thoroughfare lined with a variety of housing. We think the variety of building types and heights is something that prevents this from being a cluster of sort of same housing types. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings.
Can you just point, where's the train station, like just so we can orient ourselves?
Train station is here.
Excuse me, I'd hate to, I want the gentleman to be able to conduct this presentation. We will have a period for audience questions later on, but let's let this is the part of the presentation where we let the proponent do his presentation. So there will be a period for public comment. To move this along, we just need to be able to do this. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir. So I say the Monahan Way is the street that runs through to the train station, which is down here, and the retail frontage, as is the goal of the streetscape per the description of an overlay district for this transportation-oriented development, is one that's lively, that encourages people to not need their cars and to move from the residential to the retail uses. The combination of a low-rise and high-rise, as I say, the 4-story, the feature that becomes sort of the focus of the development, the variety of materials that we'll use, the variety of window sizes. This will not be your typical multifamily housing feel. It's one that's going to have vitality of uses, of streetscape, materials, and we think one that will fulfill the town's vision of what the transportation-oriented development should be. Thank you.
My name is Brian Marchetti. I'm a civil engineer working on behalf of the owner and applicant. So John and Sevi gave a good description of the overall development, what's planned, the architecture, the use. I'd like to give an overall description now of basically the existing site, the amenities that are around the area that would serve the proposed development, and then a brief description about the utilities and stormwater management, how we're mitigating that to meet the regulations. So this entire parcel is about just under 9 acres. We have one parcel to the west, or the east, pardon me, it's about 4 1/4 acres. It's the land that's directly to the east of Monahan Way. This existing site is right now covered in treed vegetation, scrub brush. There are a couple of wetland resource areas that were delineated in the property. The western parcel, which is between Progress Street and Monahan Way, is a little over 3 acres. It's also a mix of woodland, brush, and wetlands. When this access way was created, fill was brought in, the roadway was elevated above the existing grades that were out there. So stormwater that originally ran from an east to west direction was blocked by the roadway, so there's an isolated wetland that was created that is collected and discharged by a culvert in stormwater infrastructure within the roadway, and it discharges out at Summer Street. The middle parcel is a little over an acre. That is also owned by the applicant. So in total, the entire parcel that's highlighted by this dark black line here is, it's 8.99 acres. We started this process back in about 2014, 15, looking at the site. We had our survey, our wetland consultant, Ecotech, out of Worcester, came to the property. They delineated the wetlands out here. We then had Hoyt Land Survey come out, locate all the wetlands, all the topography, property lines, did a full survey for us. And then we started doing some layouts and conceptual renderings of what we thought the site should look like and how we could best comply with the zoning. And a vision of what the TOD development would look like. And after years of basically hashing it out, this is where we're at. And we've come to that we feel best addresses, as Sevi and John had said, the vision of the TOD. The existing site is currently served by Monahan Crossing. There are, as you can see here from the proposed layout, this is a colored rendering of the 6 buildings and the associated pavement walkways, sidewalks, the landscaped area that is going to be designed to accommodate it. Back before we came to this final layout, we did meet with Conservation Commission just about the site overall to discuss what was out there. We filed an ANRAD back in 2008 and 2018, excuse me, and an ORAD was issued, so an order of resource area delineation.
I'm calling you on acronyms. Could you explain what you just said in English, please?
An ANRAD is it's an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. So after a wetland consultant flags a site, it gets, basically in order to get approved, and so the town is on board with the delineation, you file the ANRAD with the commission. The commission sends a consultant or themselves, they go out to the property to review all the wetland flags and the lines that are on there. You file this notice with DEP and the town, and then you come and meet, present it, and then once they approve it, they issue you an ORAD, so it's an order of resource area delineation, which basically says, okay, we agree with all your lines on the plan, we agree with your wetlands, and they're approved as is. So then when we do start to file this, because obviously we have wetland impacts, we're within buffer zones, after we get through planning board, or as we get through the process here, we don't want to file with every board yet until we know we're on a path the town's going to agree with and we have a permittable project. So it's just one step ahead to make the process that much more smooth when we do go to file with conservation.
When do they do the on-site inspection?
So that was in September 2018 is when this was issued and approved. So it was late summer 2018. So as John had said, back when he bought the property, there were no utilities really to service the area. There is now. So out in Summer Street, we have gas, we have sewer, we have water all the way up through the development, currently in the roadway, and electric. There's currently electric available out in Summer Street, and there are utility poles and handholds that have been installed for street lighting and such all the way up the roadway to the Abington train station site. So it's a relatively simple connection process now to serve each one of these proposed buildings. We just have branches for water off the main run that would tie into each cluster of buildings. All that will be reviewed, obviously, by the third-party consultant in the town and DPW and engineering once this process plays out. We've yet to get a review letter back from the review consultant, so I'm not sure at what stage of the game we're at with them. You have one? Yeah. So,
We'll talk about that in a little
okay,
bit.
all right. So we haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what's in it, or try to address any questions that are in there. So, I guess stormwater is the big ticket of any development such as this. The site does have a wetland out here along the frontage of Summer Street. This was a stormwater basin constructed well in the past. The wetland associated with this basin, there is another wetland down on the southwestern portion of the site here that drains out to a culvert at Summer Street. And as I said before, there's a small isolated wetland here in the center of the property that part of this project we're proposing to fill and replicate and below the thresholds of what's allowed by Mass DEP. So we understand we will have to file the required documentation with DEP and Conservation Commission, but it's a permittable fill. Stormwater-wise, the total increase in impervious area on the whole development is about 4¼ acres. So stormwater controls have been designed to mitigate the increase. We have a series of, it's on a different sheet, I'll show you in a minute. We have a series of 4 underground detention basins that have been cited to meet the requirements of the Mass Stormwater Bylaw, or Stormwater Handbook. We have 1 underground infiltration basin up here on the northeastern portion of the site that takes parking lot and the rooftop of the multi-use building. We've got another underground infiltration basin located underneath the pavement on this side of the site that's designed to handle most of these buildings and pavement over here. We've got a 3rd detention basin below grade over here that takes a portion of these buildings and the pavement. And then a final basin, which is an infiltration basin that's proposed down on the southwestern portion of the site over here, which is designed to, again, mitigate the stormwater increase and infiltrate the required recharge volumes. That's required by DEP. Test pits were conducted in the location of every one of the basins. This site does have, and per the Massachusetts Soil Survey, it's a C and D soil, so there's a less opportunity for infiltration in these soils because of the classification of it. So as such, you take the soil survey as a basis, you go out and dig test pits and verify what you see. A soil survey is done by aerial topography and geology, so it's not an exact science. So as an engineer and a certified soil evaluator, I went out to the site, we dug some test pits, and we verified the soil conditions were out there. Because of the high groundwater, what we found, there was a perched clay layer down to a couple feet or 2-3 feet or so, and below that clay, it was a very clean sandy soil. So it's very indicative of a perched water table with some high groundwater. So 3 of these basins were cited as detention basins. So we couldn't maintain, because of the grades out here in the shallow groundwater, the required depth to groundwater below the basin to allow infiltration per the Massachusetts regulations. So 3 of the basins are functioning as detention basins, which do hold back flow, slowly let it out, so it mitigates the increase in impervious area. This one basin down here, we've designed greater than 2 feet above the groundwater table to allow infiltration and recharge, which again meets the requirements of the DEP regulations. In order to facilitate that, portions of the site, we are bringing in fill to elevate. If you drive down this road right now, when the roadway was constructed, it's raised several feet above the surrounding area. And, you know, as an engineer, you can see why when you're digging out test pits out there. If they were that low, all your utilities would be underwater. They wouldn't have been able to discharge in it, install into their catch basins, and everything would have been below the water table, and they wouldn't be allowed, you know, by gravity to daylight. So that's why the roadway's at the elevation it's at. So same logic as we're developing the site, we're going to have to raise the grades throughout here in order to maintain that separation of groundwater, to bring our utilities up out of the ground in order to make the stormwater work and meet the requirements of the DEP, and local regulations. So, like I said, we've designed this now to be in compliance with DEP and the local bylaws. Utilities are available to serve what we're proposing. We've submitted now the site plan application, all the supporting documentation to the town, and we're really waiting on that review letter you guys have in your hand to see where we're at and where to go next.
Got your copy.
Oh, where?
It's right over there.
Okay, thank you. So, so that's really the overall of how the site was designed, why it was designed, how we're proposing to bring all the utilities to serve the buildings, and how we're proposing to meet the stormwater. We understand this is not going to be a quick approval process. We're working here now with you guys to figure out, based on the comments, any modifications that are going to be required. And moving forward, once we're down in really fine-tuning what's allowed, we will file with conservation and zoning as required.
Do you have any more, presenters?
Dan Bailey, I'm the attorney for the project. Just a couple of things. I just wanted to, John spoke to it, but I'll speak to it as well. This is in the transport-oriented development overlay district, which is conveniently here on the zoning map in green. And as you'll note, that's a small district that's, of course, in close proximity to the train station. It's not unusual. A lot of communities, as the train has gone further out, have adopted these TOD districts. They're highly encouraged by the state. Oftentimes a predicate for receiving grant money is the push to, I mean, you hear it, you see it in the paper all the time. High-density development close to train station. I've done a lot of this kind of work myself, particularly in Westwood and Norwood. And the projects have been quite successful in terms of you see a very great amount of pedestrian activity going to the train station. The other thing that I want to mention about this project is, there are several principles that are set out in your TOD bylaw. Pedestrian-friendly, mixed use, a higher level of architectural aesthetic than you might normally see with multifamily. We've tried to hit all of those in designing this so that it truly is a transit-oriented development type project. Happy to take any questions. I'm sure you're going to start with the peer review letter, and we can start marching through that and whatever else the board desires.
All right, thank you. Could we bring the representatives from Beals and Thomas up here to talk, guys?
So I'm Matthew Cody, from Beals and Thomas, registered professional engineer. We were the peer reviewer on behalf of the board. We issued a letter to the board dated May 24th, raising several questions about this design as proposed. In lieu of just going through them one by one, I mean, we had questions about the relationship with the MBTA, and that letter from the MBTA kind of echoes those concerns. Concerns about, or just questions and looking for clarification more about the floor area ratios and the setback and zoning relief that's going to be required for the project. There seemed to be some inconsistencies in the parking and bedroom counts that were provided that we're looking for some clarification on. We understand that the existing utilities are there, but we're looking for some further clarification on just the capacity and the condition of those utilities to serve such a jump in capacity and new flows that are going to be generated and the demands that the water main is going to be under for a project of this size. We also had we're looking for clarification on the turning movements and the locations of dumpsters and different things. Access for the fire department. Some of the radiuses seem tight for getting bigger trucks around, especially if cars are parked in all the spots. Snow removal. It didn't seem that there was appropriate areas for snow removal, but that's certainly something that could be clarified. And then regarding the stormwater, it's got a pretty extensive system. We had several questions, questions looking for clarification on how some of those things are modeled. Some inconsistencies between the details and the representations on the plans, but the stuff that can be resolved. And then from a landscape perspective, just some of the buffer zones and screening that's required. We're looking for some clarification on that. But without going through every comment one by one, in the interest of time, and I'm certainly here available to, answer any questions if there's specific questions about any of our comments in general.
Mr. Chairman, you mind if the fire department comments at this time?
Yeah, good, Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you for your presentation. Obviously, you've put a lot of work into this. It's very professional. And you've done a lot of work, as you stated, in the towns of Plymouth, Lawrence, some of the larger towns. We're not a large town, and we don't have a large fire department. And all of my comments are going to be in relation to public safety in the fire department. And I'm going to start a little globally in town, but it is all related to this project. And I'm going to hone in specifically on some questions I have, if you'll allow me to do that. Excuse me. The main fire department concerns with not only this development, but we have seen a massive increase in development town-wide, which is not your fault. However, cumulatively, it is affecting your fire department and public safety. This project would be in addition to the Woodlands, the Gables, Havana, Thayer Street, Randolph Street has a new development going in right now. New England Art has a large, that's been a large work in progress, and that has taken an immense amount of our time, and we still haven't gotten very far with that. Chestnut Street has a large commercial property going up as we speak. We still have the widening of Route 18. And again, these do not affect your project. However, cumulatively on this town, this is affecting all of us. It is certainly affecting the fire department to the standpoint where we're not able to complete our annual fire inspections. In my next budget cycle, I'm going to be requesting an additional fire prevention officer because we're already behind. Prior to building any of these other build-outs that are already on, either on plans or in the works that are coming, we can't keep up. I am going to tie this to this project. Getting closer just to Summer Street, and we have certainly have some concerns with the traffic in that area. Again, right now we still have the Woodlands. That is existing. We have an additional unit that the foundation is in. I believe that's a 10 unit that will be added directly across the street from this. La Pointe has a project proposed, which would be another senior center, which is an additional 250 to 300 units, as I recall. We have the senior center. We have the dog park. We have the MBTA crossing as well as the station. It is a massive amount of activity in a very small, congested area. So this project specifically, this is a very large project, as you all attested. I agree with that. We're not saying, not necessarily not build anything here. This is a large project even for the town of Abington. You're asking for a lot of waivers in your packet that I received, which makes me a little worried, because you actually had one area stating that there may be more waivers to come, depending upon how this project proceeds. I'll talk to that in a moment. The water capacity for fire flows, and again, I believe you mentioned it, we have to consider not only this project as well as the Woodlands, but we also have a couple other projects that aren't even built yet. And again, cumulatively, where is this going to go? We had a large fire, Weymouth had a large fire that we were at just over a year ago, where brand new in Southfield, in Union Point. Again, these projects, they come in, they get built, we get it, and then they sell. That's a prime example of that. There was not enough fire flow for a brand new development that's right behind the U-Haul on Route 18. They're still working on that. These are making me nervous, as on paper they look good, but until we start building them and we actually start using them, that's not the time to find out there's no fire flow. I'd be requesting a very comprehensive fire flow as well as a traffic study for this area to make sure that the mains can handle not only this project, but all of the projects either currently or soon to be built. You have a height waiver request. Right now, I believe there's a 35-foot maximum currently, or at least that's as you wrote it. You're looking for 54 feet. That is a 6-story building. You have one area on this is a 4-story building with a 5th story in the attic and a 6th story with the cupola. This was taken today, this is New England art. This is the exact same thing. That is 4 stories with that tower equals the 5th and 6th story. We did this because I wanted to make sure our Tower 1 can reach that tower. Because if you have a lightning strike or anything that we had to gain access to that, I want to make sure we're able to do it. Now, we're able to reach the New England Art Tower, however, your project, did you have a, your tower is set back somewhat. That might be the best one. If you folks can see this, this is set back. So I am not confident our brand-new tower truck is able to reach that, not because of the height. This isn't the height, it's the reach. It is the angle from where we're going to have to park to be able to reach up to that point for whatever reason. I'm not convinced Tower 1 can reach that height. I would request no height waivers be granted. In fact, I'd actually request no waivers be granted due to one sentence in their narrative that really made me a little bit nervous, which is the list of waivers is preliminary and may change if there are changes to the project plans. What are you planning for a sprinkler system? Because if this were to be built, I would require a full 13 system, not a 13R. A 13R is a residential system with no protection in the attics. We've had several buildings in this town that got past that. This cannot do it. This is too large. And again, whatever, we're looking at parking waivers. We begin shrinking down the parking areas. We have to be able to maneuver the apparatus. If you're coming in to build a large project, we shouldn't have to change how we do business to suit you. You need, in my opinion, to suit how we're able to take care of this project. I'm almost done. Another question I had, and again, it's in your narrative, and you spoke highly, and it does sound great, of having a mixed use, having commercial property on here, down below, some retail, commercial, what have you. However, in your narrative, you mentioned, and I'm going to read this one paragraph, I'm assuming most residents have not heard this. Although the plans for a mixed use on the project design, the long-term community benefit for the project would exclude the commercial component, and as such, the owner is seeking a waiver. The demand for commercial space in this neighborhood would not be significant enough to warrant more than a few spaces. So is that going to turn that area that was going to be commercial into residential? And if that's the case, is that going to exceed the 165 units? That would be a question. And that's, at this point, after the brief view that we've had with the plans from the fire department, we have concerns over these buildings are way too close to each other. I really couldn't read on the plans that we were submitted, and we blew them up, but I didn't see the dimensions between these buildings. I'd be afraid of a conflagration hazard. If you get a fire in one of these, the close proximity, I think that's a 25-foot road. I do not know what these measurements are. I did not see them. They are right next to each other. And we're talking high buildings. These are all 3-story buildings, which we have around town. Those are large anyway. This reminds me of the Mount Washington Hotel. This is the 6-story building, realistically 4. However, when you look at the roof, peek up there, you're 5 stories. And they're that close proximity to each other. You get a fire in this unit or up in the attic, and the wind is blowing. This one is a very close exposure. And we can't get apparatus down here because it's just too narrow. So, thank you. We have concerns.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to open this up to the board for comment, and then we'll do public comment. But board members, you folks have any comments on this?
I mean, it was up to me, the fire chief would have 6 more guys on his crew. So, we can advocate for additional fire staff for the board of selectmen. Hopefully that message will resonate with them, because you're right, we are adding a lot.
I actually had a conversation with Tom Minion today for at least one prevention, but the way the waters are, you can't necessarily allocate tax money.
Yeah. All over there. Well, no, not from this project, but I'm saying that we're bringing on 3 additional sizable projects. We need to staff up to serve it for multiple departments in this town.
We're certainly there for all of us.
Couple of quick questions. Just I'm trying to jog my memory regarding the benefits of transit-oriented development districts. As a developer, do you get any benefits from the state in terms of when you build in there? Any waivers or grants or? No. Okay.
Actually, okay, I'm a planner for the Old Colony Planning Council in Brockton. And transit-oriented development districts, if the town has that, it makes the town eligible for a lot of grant opportunities for the town. We could spell it, I'm sure you could, but I'm trying to think, Brockton, Stoughton, a few places in the 17 towns in the Old Colony Planning Council district have it. And some of these towns have used it to their advantage as far as grants and stuff like that. This stuff is all available. If you look up transit-oriented development, I love to spell out these acronyms, and the state, and you can see the benefits that the town is eligible. We have a transit-oriented development project there now. It was a 40B housing project. And I've done traffic counts. People do walk from that development to the train station. So it's not as if we don't have any development in the Todd right now. So there is a precedent. And again, I'm not speaking in favor or against. I'm just telling you, there's a precedent. There is Todd development in that district.
So my next question was, is there a benefit for the town for having this district? I'm pretty sure there is. If so, I'd be interested to know. I don't know if, Bruce, you can do a little bit of research just to track down what some of the opportunities might be for towns who have this, dealing with developments in that district. I'm pretty sure they were offering some sort of carrot stick approach a bunch of years ago.
There are, Rick. By having a Todd, it's reduces the cars and stuff like that. People can take the train, to the sites and stuff like that. Like I say, I've seen people walk. I've had to do, part of my job, I have to count the cars at the parking lots and also pedestrians, walk from the existing housing. So there are a number of state programs. Again, I can find that and list that for the public record, but there is, if you look up Transit-Oriented Development District, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there's a series of programs. I know that a number of our Old Colony Planning Council communities that have TODs have taken advantage of these things. But basically, it works because of the access of public transit. In order for a town to get benefits from these TOD districts, there has to be the public transit or automobile, whatever. But the train is really the carrot and the stick thing, having the availability of public transit next to these. That's the reason why the town adopted the TOD years ago, is because we thought having housing, having development near the train station would, allow it to tie into the train line and reduce car traffic in the town, because people who live there would take the train to and from work, for example. So that's an advantage to have. Again, I'm not speaking as an advocate for this project. I'm just telling you from a planner's perspective, these are the opportunities available to communities that have TODs. And again, I'm a planner for the Old Colony Planning Council in addition to being a planner. I'm a member of this planning board, so I'm just stating facts that are available to the public record.
So, if you live on Summer Street and you got a notification for this hearing, can you raise your hand? All right, see, this is a problem that I think we need to address when we redo our bylaws. I have no doubt these went out correctly, but that list only had one residential house on Summer Street. We need to figure out a better way of notifying people, because there's a lot of people interested that wouldn't have known about it otherwise. So whatever we're doing to for notifications, and when we redo our bylaws, I'd like to figure out what are other towns doing to help get the word out on these sort of projects. Have you had conversations with water and sewer?
Yes, we have.
What did they say?
It's been a while, but it's my understanding that we're...
Sean Carpenter, Shamrock Development. We have gone to the Joint Water Works, and we got preliminary approval for our higher unit count, but as we kind of designed this, we've shrunk this now down a little bit. We have not formally gone in front of the sewer for what we've had offline conversation.
When did you get that from the Joint Water Works? Was it like recently or a couple of years ago?
Oh, no, it was within the last 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was last summer.
Okay.
I remember it was hot and there was no air conditioning in the building, so.
All right.
Because their AC was down, so that's.
Okay.
Might have been December.
Do you have any traffic count numbers?
We actually commissioned a traffic study, and we designed the traffic study around the notion of a daycare in the commercial space so that we could stress the project to its potential. Unfortunately, we don't have the traffic study back today, but we will have it within a couple of days. My guess is that you were going to ask us for one, so we just kind of jumped ahead and did it. And we'll be happy to provide it to Beals and Thomas as soon as it comes in. Jack Gillen did it, Gillen Associates. They've also done other projects in the area, so the traffic counts are very current.
Rick, if I can step in, could you know offhand where the turning movement counts, the traffic volume counts were done, locations?
So I asked them to do an extra one, but I don't want to go on record and tell you exactly where, but if I had to guess, it would be at the major intersections and on Summer Street.
Okay.
But I did ask them to do an extra one, and we paid for an extra one because we knew that from previous hearings on other projects, we knew that traffic was a concern, so we wanted to have the best possible numbers.
And that, just as a clarification, these involve like 24, 48-hour counts, turning movement counts at intersections, stopping sight distances, things like that, I guess.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it's pretty interesting stuff, I will tell you that, but...
I've known it for over 30-something years, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's,
So what I asked the traffic engineer to do was to really stress this project so that we can have the best information. We are not trying to jam this down the town's throat. What we're trying to do is build the best project in accordance with the bylaw that was approved by town meeting and do all these third-party reports that we think is necessary to keep the project, decent, but also within the zoning code.
Um,
Can I ask a quick question? So when you do a traffic report, I just want to make sure, is it just for this project because there's so many projects around this area, or is it included with these projects? There's, like you said, there's a building across the street, there's the Abington Senior Center, or is it just for this project? When you count traffic back and forth?
I'm going to allow this one question because
I'm
we're going to go into public comment in a minute, and I want my board members to be able to continue it, but you will have your chance. But I'll let them answer this one question for you right now.
Yeah, the traffic studies, to my knowledge, are done based on the existing traffic counts, but may or may not take into account future projects. I'm not the person to speak to that. We have a traffic engineer. Yeah.
I think it would be fair eventually to hear from your traffic engineer on this subject. Okay. Any other board members have any? Rick, do you have any more?
A couple more questions, sorry. So my concern with Summer Street is that when we did the transit-oriented development all those years ago, we didn't have a senior center, we didn't have a few other things that are going on now. And Summer Street wasn't built for the volume it's starting to take on. So I'm very curious to see what the impact is going to be, particularly with some of the potential uses. So, and if there are any creative solutions we can come up with to mitigate the impact on Summer Street. And what that means, I'm not sure, but that's why you have a traffic engineer. So, and then,
If I could, just respond to that. I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of potential for, any number of projects will draw traffic. But it's one of the reasons why we're asking for the waiver on the commercial, which has been granted on other TOD projects in that district, because, it's not gonna rent up, there's not gonna be a Macy's, coming into that area. But that space will not take on new residential units because whatever you approve is what you approve, but will be more open space, open foyers or hallways or, lobbies and whatnot. But yeah, so there's concerns about that, and I think that that's a key mitigation factor is eliminating the commercial use.
And then my other biggest concern is just that physically it's going to work with the drainage and the engineering because that is a pretty wet area.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to know, we had several questions or looking for some clarifications on how that all works.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for now.
Any other? Bob?
Yeah.
Jeff?
I have a few. Kind of interior side, there's some areas of, some aspects of this, of traffic that I need to ask questions about. Well, first is, it is pretty obvious that it looks, unless there's some dimensions, it looks very difficult for a fire engine or anything like that to move around, especially around the main building. I call the L building, main building, I assume that's what it really is. It's kind of like the center, it's got the pool, the L-shaped building? Yes? All right. That kind of, between the circulation going around the site, that, I mean, there's just areas all over the place that the chief has alluded to that you just can't move through. The other part is that I don't see any place where loading zones might be here, where UPS would drop off, or somebody's moving into their apartments or whatever, and where those might be. That's one of it. The other part to that is is the mail going to, is there going to be a building on the site for the mail to be delivered to? I want to kind of get an idea of how that circulation's going, about that, how they deliver to the buildings, get around. That L-shaped building, having the commercial component, also going back to the loading zone and having UPS-sized trucks delivering goods to whatever that might be going on in those first floor. And of how that circulation would work, where do they stop? I mean, I guess we want to make sure that nobody's parking along, what's the name of the road there going up the middle? Monahan. I assume we're going to make sure there's no parking happening on Monahan at all. I don't know how that will work with the T, but so I wanted to know about that. The interior circulation of how you get, again, the L building is the main focus of the property, and it seems to be, I mean, that's the only one that really is a TOD. The other ones are all residential. My concern about commercial, I'll just jump off the track for a second. Commercial, we've had many examples in this town where people have come and built commercial on the first floor and an apartment on the second floor, and then come back saying, oh, I can't rent it commercially, but can we turn it into apartments? And that happens all the time. So it's going to be hard to take anybody's word as to, no, it will never be apartments. You'll have to be designated as such, and as the loading would really need to be show how that's going to work. That also goes to how does this, I can see there's the road is lined with trees going up and down. It looks beautiful, but I also notice we're having troubles with selecting incorrect trees as to because otherwise they just get overgrown and they become ridiculous and have to be cut down. But when you're going by that L-shaped building along the street, I would imagine that would be the side that would advertise to people outside that are just going from the T station out to see if they know there's a coffee shop. Oh, I'll just leave my truck here for a second, walk up and get a coffee. Or laundry, I can see that kind of happening here. But I would see that there would mean some street frontage that would have to be open. And I would imagine there'd be doors along that side as well. So I don't know how far the commercial component in your plan has gone beyond the conceptual stage. That you haven't looked at? Okay. Knowing some of those other traffic things, it comes down to, going back to the road, that it doesn't look any way of avoiding putting a set of lights at the end of the road to control the traffic before the railroad station, and the senior center, and this space. And my concern about even with a set of lights there that could possibly slow down the traffic there, and that is a really bad speed bump. Everybody that's driven that way knows that you've got to keep your mind driving, or you might get careened by someone coming the other way. The roads are very narrow right there. That this road is a speedway, it's a straightaway. There's nothing better than a straight road to drive fast on. And I know you didn't build it, but I would imagine that they're having trouble with, well, they did in the, I think they did on the base where they raise up sections of the road to make really physical barriers. So if there is, let's say there was a set of lights, or I'm trying to get out in the next crowd, they're not racing to the end of the road to get there. And the same thing coming the other way. I jumped away from that one subject, and I'll come back to it. I got off on the commercial property. But I don't see any, I'm not sure how, but I'm in building F or building E, and I want to walk across the street to the commercial, I want to go to the pool. I don't know if that's an exclusive pool or whatever that might be, but but I'm going over to that building for any reason, how am I going to pass this road that may become very fast? And I don't see any crosswalks areas where they promote more pedestrian traffic and less about the cars. The cars already got an advantage. They're moving 35 miles an hour, but people are moving at 5 miles an hour or less. How they get across. I can kind of see you look like, I'm not quite sure why you made the street look super wide over there. You didn't include the sidewalks as part of your paving between the buildings. See how it narrows down in the middle?
Or in here?
Nope, the big white strip.
That's the existing roadway.
But on the plan, it shows sidewalks kind of going out to that edge.
So there are existing sidewalks that run along both sides of the road, I mean, it's the existing roadway.
Okay, so you just didn't shade it in over there?
Well, because we're not proposing to redo the whole right of way. So we're only rebuilding and reconstructing. So I showed proposed sidewalks where we need to do some grading and cutting to make them work. The rest of the sidewalks are being maintained. The grades are being maintained, so we don't have to rip them off, replace them.
Two components that I seriously see missing. I don't know how to feel about I don't know how I'd feel about living next to them. Being apart from it, it's just a big complex to me. But I'm looking at, there are two things to mitigate, and that's how to properly control the traffic at Summer Street, and how to get between one side of the road and the other side of the road and show this project has more pedestrian to it. One of the things they were looking at the art building was they don't have as much parking as they might need, but to have an area where zip cars promoting as part of their actually leasing or rent or selling to the property, that there'd be incentives to forget a car and just use whatever, maybe a temporary car to get to the store, but to try to keep everybody out of their cars. There's a lot of asphalt around this. And I don't think that it properly shows where you've inserted it into the trees, at least in that photograph, that I think there's going to be a lot more asphalt showing around than those trees allude to it. They're kind of covering half of the parking, the trees that are in front of it. So how you handle that existing road and its connection to Summer Street, and what we do seriously there, regardless of this traffic study is going to show it's a nightmare. We all know.
The traffic study should also identify some of these mitigation measures for speed bumps along the roadway and additional crosswalks. And, we purposely located the entrances across from each other, so we could have crosswalks. And we show ramps there, but there's no crosswalk shown on the plan, but that is the intent. And we will certainly add that and have our traffic consultant address it.
Yeah, I'd like to see how you really focus on how people walk around and try to forget about the cars being there. I mean, you've got to provide parking spots, obviously. Well, we're really trying to orientate people to where things are going, whether or not, You ever hear? I'm sorry, did you? Oh, that's it.
Okay. Rob, do you have anything?
Not at this moment, thank you.
Just a comment. You were at a disadvantage tonight because you didn't have your traffic engineer here. Obviously, a lot of questions, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of questions from the public about traffic. One suggestion, when we have Beals and Thomas here, I personally would like to have a peer review of their traffic study done, and you guys have a traffic engineer who can do that, so?
Yeah, we usually would hire a separate consultant to be specific on the traffic. We're not traffic engineers by trade, and it seems like the level of detail you'd want, we would probably have to hire somebody.
And Jeff, and just a question, answer
we have traffic engineers we work with regularly for such a situation.
So I think we were going to require that to have. And Jeff, just one answer to a question. Traffic lights require something called a signal warrant analysis. So any has to be a level of service to require a traffic light. So any requested traffic lights would have to meet the MassDOT specifications, for the traffic signals. You just can't plonk a traffic light anywhere. It has to be certain standards and stuff like that. So that's just a point of information.
Sure.
So the board is happy for right now? All right. I'm going to open it up to the public for your questions. We'll start with the first hand I see. Name and address, please.
Sure. I'm Stephanie, who live at 92 Progress Street. But it was quiet street. On one side is wetlands, and the side behind my house are the trees and the train station. Soon to find, after moving in, I found out that Progress Street is a huge cut-through street for woodlands. So I did want to know for concessions for current residents that have bought this proposed plan, if we could have traffic calming measures, just like you were saying earlier about the speed bumps or something, because it's out of control. I have a 2-year-old and twin 6-month-old babies, and I walk Progress Street every day, and it's dangerous. There's no sidewalk or anything too, so it also needs a sidewalk. And then it looks like there are, against Progress Street, the back there, I don't know what parking area would be against, I just can't see, so is that what it is?
Yeah, the parking area this side.
Okay.
There's a privacy fence.
So then would that, then we would have to request a huge privacy fence and trees just to give additional privacy and sound, because it's quiet in the backyard unless the train's going by. But just the new construction that would be there, the new tenants and everything, I think that's a big concern. Or just now there's people right in your backyard, whereas before it was just trees. So those are just selfishly, and I don't know if anybody Progress Street will feel the same way.
Absolutely. The trees is actually a big deal. It's what we can, that's how we live back there.
Name and address,
Name and
please.
address, please, ma'am.
Jim Farrell, 66 Progress Street. The trees is what keeps us sane with when the train goes by. And in the winter, it's much louder. So if you take down the trees and you're just putting up a privacy fence, it's going to be like down the street when the train came in, build up this big fence, but you can hear it, everything rattles. So there has to be some kind of tree line or something there that will take that, there'll be a buffer for us. And having that parking right there, they're going to be in our backyard.
Gentleman with the hand up. Yes, please. Name and address, please.
Chris Cronin, 458 Summer Street. I'd just like to ask each gentleman, how many vehicles will the 6 buildings accommodate? Parking.
We have a total of 205 parking spaces.
Okay. 205. All right. So I'm just wondering if Summer Street would be able to handle all this additional traffic. That's my question, please.
Okay. Ma'am?
Suzanne Jesper, 188 Central Street. I'm also the COA director. And my concern is for my visually impaired seniors and also hearing impaired seniors with all the traffic that's going to be coming into that little area. And to be mindful of that. We talked about putting a light there. Abington does not have any visually impaired lighting system, where in Boston it buzzes or it tells you to walk or whatever, and especially in the Woodlands where I do have seniors, walking from the Woodlands to this Abington Senior Center and then potentially walking to the T station. But I have to stress, I'm really worried about the traffic. There's a lot of things being built in that small area where the senior center is.
Sorry, okay. I'll do the lady first. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, good. And name and address, please.
John B. 501 Summer Street.
Yes.
This is right in front of me. I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. Very concerned with the traffic. Already seeing it with Route 18 being done because they're flying through Summer Street to get out the other end. And I have the 2 children that, I mean, I shove them in my backyard, but they do like to ride their bikes too. I'm worried about the schools. 6 buildings. I did not receive a letter. I heard on Facebook 2 buildings. So coming here and hearing 6 buildings, I'm totally shocked. And we have 1 elementary school, 1 3rd and 4th grade. So I'm concerned about the schools and all these kids coming in. Is there going to be enough room? Are we going to be able to do this? The central school building, we just are just selling it now. What are they building there? Somebody said apartments there too. So I'm just concerned what's going on in our neighborhood again. And if you're going for all the commercial, what about all those empty buildings on Route 18? Here we put cleanings and daycares in those empty buildings that are all sitting there.
waiting for something to go there.
I wish we could order that.
I mean, wouldn't that, I'd rather
Can't.
do that, but my biggest concern is, I can do your traffic report for you sitting in my front yard. It's not good now, it's awful. Summer Street is not a traffic street. The commuter rail, my husband takes it every day, it's already packed. So you're gonna put 6 more buildings, and that one train that comes to Abington already packed is gonna be packed again. So that's, I guess, another concern, I guess, because everyone's like, yay, the train. They're already packed.
Sir?
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
Paul Redmore, 60 Summer Street. I'm at the farther end of close to Route 18. I have a daughter who won't walk that train anymore because she's been hit twice. Summer Street is a major cut through from Abington all the way down to Hanover. We are a raceway, and I don't care when the traffic study was done, do it on a Saturday night. When we're afraid to leave our driveways because of the running down Summer Street. We've heard from the fire chief, we haven't heard from the police chief. How does this impact public safety in that area? Summer Street's a very congested area as it is. I've lived on Summer Street for 25 years. And we moved to Abington because it was a very country feel. I've watched the ones go up, I've watched the trains go in, and again, we're going to get the dog park in there, which I think is going to be great overall for Abington, whether you like it or you don't. That's going to bring more traffic down Summer Street. And now you're proposing 167 units plus retail. One of the gentlemen, when someone said something about the retail space, he said it would be vacant. We don't need vacant retail space in Abington. We've got enough of that as well. There is no benefits to the people that live in this community or on those streets that you can sell to us, right? Raise your hand, you're on some, I mean, this is going to be detrimental to our lifestyle. For me to get out of my driveway to go to work in the morning takes 15 minutes. And we've taken to backing in our driveway because we have to take our life in our hands to get onto that street as it is. It's not fair to the people that have lived here to keep throwing up commercial after commercial after commercial property because you guys did a great job planning and everything. I work in construction, I get the work that goes into it, but once this is all built and everything, you guys are gone. We have to live with the impact. We have to live with the traffic study that doesn't show now what's going to happen 3 to 5 years down the road when we still want to live on Summer Street or Progress Street or any street that gets between 1858 or down to Hanover. And I don't care what benefits we can get because it's a special designated area. We pay our taxes. You can't sell it on me. And I don't think anyone on Summer Street that you'd be able to sell any sort of a branch or anything like that, I don't think you'd be able to sell it because from Walnut Street down to 58, we don't even have sidewalks for people. If we can't accommodate the people that are there to walk their dogs, to take their kids for a walk, to get from our houses to the train station so we're not taking our cars, tell me how that's going to work with 167 new families. Because that's what I'm not hearing. And with Progress Street being the way it is, and Summer Street being situated where it is, we can't take any more infrastructure on that street. And I don't know with all the buildings going on in town, how we're going to be able to handle it from a life safety perspective. If there's no benefit to we're going to keep growing and keep adding and adding, and there's no place to put these people. We can't meet the needs of all these people. There's no way. And for whatever retail is going to end up in here, I know people are not going to be walking down Summer Street to go to a cafe in this new development because it's going to be isolated for that community. So there's no benefit to Abington unless it's going out for dinner on Friday or Saturday nights at restaurants that, again, are already crowded because we're overpopulated. If you want to wait 3 hours at this restaurant or 2 hours at that restaurant, go right ahead. That's not going to help us any.
Can I ask one question? The traffic report, when will you be doing that?
We wouldn't be doing.
Well, when will you said you were gonna have another one done? Was it done during the school too, or school time? Because school gets out in 8 days, but we have 5 school buses that go up and down Summer Street too, for kindergarten through 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and the middle school. There are 5 school buses that go up and down. I just want to make sure it's done during the school year.
The traffic counts were done last month.
Okay, so it's during the school time, like when the school buses come in the morning and afternoon?
That's why we ordered it ahead of time, so that because we wanted to catch it, we knew that these hearings were going to be going on during the summer when school was not in session. Again, we heard from folks around town that we had spoken to that, do these traffic counts while school is in session, so we did that.
I don't mean in session, I mean when the buses are riding around, because we already have people passing the buses.
During the school year.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We require this, because the only way a traffic count is logical is to do it during the school year, when the school buses are going.
Okay.
You know, it's like, you can't do it in the summer when the kids aren't there. Okay.
Well, they're all on the street in the front yards.
This lady right in front of me with the glasses here, please.
Jane Cronin, 400 Summer Street. We've lived on Summer Street for 40 years, so we've seen a lot of changes, so I can echo everything that you're saying. I have 2 concerns and then a question. The wetlands are a huge issue. The whole drainage issue for the entire, I don't know a person on Summer Street who doesn't have, a sump pump or a French drain or any of those kinds of things. And now you're going to be taking away a lot of forestation, shrubs, and natural things and putting in buildings and parking lots, which is, I think, going to mess up the whole area even more. And just to consider the wildlife in the area, just because of the dog park being built across the street from us, which is fine, but it has disturbed so much that we now have a fox living in our backyard in the den, which we've never had, because and I see him going back and forth because he still hunts across the street, but he has to take care of his kids in our backyard. So those are all concerns. But my question is, because I didn't know about this until 5 o'clock today, I'd really like an explanation of what the process is. This is a public hearing. I know there was one, I guess, because I looked on the town site on May 6th, but there are no minutes about it. I didn't know about that one. What is the whole process to go through for this? I'm asking the planning board.
Yeah, as Ms. Shea said, this is done by the assessors.
The applicant files an application. If it's a large project like this, that would require, there are certain things in the site plan bylaw that will trigger a public hearing. This met quite a few of them. And a notice went out to the people on the certified abutters list. You're going to have to speak to the abutters about who got notified.
What's an abutter?
Someone who lives directly next to the property.
100, okay, so.
No, someone who lives directly next to the property. Their property butts up against the property that we're talking about.
So I'm 3 houses.
Like Mr. Rogers lives right next door, so he would have been notified. You're 3 houses away, I don't think you would have been notified.
For something this big?
Yes.
Yeah.
The same abutters list applies to everybody. So then I prepare the ad's in the newspaper, 2 weeks.
Which newspaper?
The Brockton Enterprise.
Okay, which I
In
have.
Abington?
Nobody gets it.
The May 6th hearing, they failed to place it in the newspaper, which is why there was a defect in the advertising, and which is why the hearing is tonight. I re-notified off the same abutters list the change in date, so everybody on the abutters list should have received a second letter. So there's people on Progress Street who are about the back, and anybody on Summer Street.
Did anyone on Progress Street receive a letter?
Yes, they did, because they called me.
So I'm still trying to understand though, from here, this
Yes.
is a public hearing. Now, is there another public hearing? Or is there how does this process play out?
That's what they'll figure out.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
We are not going to be taking a vote tonight,
Yeah.
so this will be continued to a future meeting.
This is going to be continued. Obviously, there's a lot, I was waiting to say this, but obviously a lot of issues have been raised. gentleman had an answer to your question.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what I was going to recommend is, given projects like this that create a lot of concern and fear and conversation, you know, in the public hearings, we hear a lot of times the same conversation over and over. And we're really here to listen and to try to mitigate it. That's why everybody's taking notes. What I might recommend is if you continue this hearing tonight, between now and then, we notify the entire town, and our entire team would be more than willing to sit with the entire community to try to mitigate some of these concerns or address some of the concerns or misconceptions. We can advertise it on the Facebook page. We can advertise it. We don't have to limit ourselves to the abutters list, which is very limiting, and it's always, very often I go into these towns, and that's the biggest concern, is that I didn't get notified, I didn't get notified. So what I might recommend, and this is entirely up to you, is through the continuation process, rather than, you know, hear a lot of the same stuff over and over again, we might just sit down, and if the town would be so willing to allow us a conference room, we'd sit with members of the community and address those concerns.
That was something that I was going to suggest. When the Woodlands project was done, they did community outreach. They, you have coffee with people, but basically, in Wayne, anyway, they reached out, they met with the community, and they addressed their concerns, and that was a 40B project, and that thing went through. So that's just a suggestion. We're going to get a few more questions, and then I think I'm going to give this back to the board. I think we're going to continue this.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes, Mr. McGrath.
Rich McGraw, 340 Diane Circle. Just for the record, are there any variances on this project at all? Any variances? Just for the record.
We haven't got that far, but it's possible.
What's that?
We haven't got that far, but that's a possibility.
We haven't got that far, but there might be.
That's a possibility.
Lady in the back.
Hopefully not, but it's a possibility.
Aaron Bowles, 937 Plymouth Street. I have a couple of questions for you. You've got this thing called Moynihan. That must be the road that runs through Summer Street. If you haven't mentioned anything about the other side of anything coming or going on Route 123, were you going to block that road off so nobody can get through? You're going to have the traffic coming from the train station, going back and forth, and the feasibility study, and the lawyer for the town said it when there was another development going on down on Plymouth Street. It's 144 units, and they said, the lawyer said, after the feasibility study was done, there was going to be at least 600 trips going in and out of this development over the course of the day. So, and that's on 144 units. So what's going to happen with 160 units? There's the traffic, and then the storm drain. I mean, that's to be taken into consideration too, because Veterans Place has beautiful storm drains, and everything rushes down like a flood into Carriage Hill Drive, which is overflow, and they were supposed to have them over. So these are things not bringing out that
Continue it for 2
now
months
that we're
and
gonna have
ask
to,
them
address,
set up their
and
own
everybody else should be waiting there too, but these are things to take into consideration. Especially with the pond. You don't have the pond in the right spot on your And that's hard.
It's going to go to September.
This is a certified
September.
I'm sorry, well, he was wrong, because the pond.
This isn't bad. This isn't bad.
It is.
Let's take a look at the control.
But those are things that have to be taken into
I got to get the
consideration.
guy in the corner.
David Smith in the corner.
Okay, Mr. Smith?
I think they had their hands up first.
Okay, sure
But-
thing.
Should I?
Yeah, please.
David Smith, 941 Main Street, Hingham, Mass. I'm a trustee of Center Avenue Realty Trust, and I just want the board to be aware that there is a 50-foot easement that the trust has from our property out to Summer Street.
Is this the one that connects through to 123 next to the development that's being built now?
It would be from where our lot line is, the westerly project that, did I go up to the map?
But it runs all the way out to Route 123?
Goes out to Summer Street. Goes out to Summer Street.
But didn't you also have, you had one off 123 as well, didn't
We
you?
own that property.
Okay.
But
Does it connect to that property?
yes.
The easement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, there with your hands up, please.
Yes, my name is Jim Carson. I live at 974 Plymouth Street. My wife and I bought our house 29 years ago, and one reason because we like it.
I want to make sure it ran all the way up.
And we found out yesterday on Facebook, a very nice post that said they're going to build one building with 165 apartments on Summer Street. So I went and I knocked on over a dozen doors yesterday on Summer Street and on Plymouth Street. Only one person who was abutting knew about this meeting or even this project. No one. I talked to people on Hershey Lane. No one knew anything about this. And the traffic, forget it. I drive on Summer Street every day. And even between the train letting out, at any time during the day, the traffic occasionally will back up to the senior center, from Route 58 to the senior center. And I think that it appears that this is trying to be snuck by the people, because one concerned citizen posted on Facebook about it. Otherwise, almost no one, except for one person that's abutting it, knew about this project, this mammoth project.
Well, we've explained to you the process that abutters are notified.
Yes,
And so
that's
this,
it.
so this process was done. I can't say that this project was being, again, we're not trying to sneak anything past. This is a public process. But you understand the abutters. I give you an example. 121 Randolph Street, down the street from me. I live at 69 Randolph Street. I'm not a direct abutter, so I didn't get a notice. And that's like a couple hundred apartment units. But because I'm not a direct abutter, because my house isn't next to that, I wasn't notified of that. But I mean, on the planning board, so I knew about it. So, you know, you have to live right next to the thing. You have to abut it to be notified with the process that we have. So it's not a question of trying to sneak anything past you. It's a question of the process that we have. I'm sorry you feel that way, but
I
that's the
feel that
process.
it's unethical of this board or that board or the select. They don't notify us about a massive project like this.
I just want to point
I
out
think it's unethical.
that the notice that you're referring to that was posted was originally posted by me to notify the town of what was on the agenda for this evening. So if we wanted to sneak it by somebody, I wouldn't have posted it.
Posted where?
On Facebook.
On Facebook?
Yeah. So I'm not saying that you're not incorrect, that we need to do a better job, have a different set of standards for what needs to be notified for an abutter, but we weren't trying to sneak anything, because if we were, we wouldn't have posted it in the first place on.
It's not fair to say that we're trying to, this is a public board, we're transparent.
I talked to a number, I'm not just speaking for myself, I talked to a number of people who had no ID, no ID. So that's why I use the word sneaking. We've got all these people that have no idea. An adjective escapes me for what it is, but more people should know about this. I think you'd have double the number of people if the whole town knew about this, not just your post on Facebook, one woman's post on Facebook.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, not to disagree with you, I just want to let you know that we're notified by everything that goes on with both the planning and the zoning the same way. I knew about this about a month or two ago when I got the first plans on it, and I had immediate questions then. It's the same process. I think this happens to be a little unique where the way that the running properties lay with it, but and I'm not taking sides or anything, but really I think this is kind of just how it is. It happens to be that there weren't a lot of direct butters to this to get a mailing. They don't mail out to every residence on every single hearing that they have. They can afford that. So I think, real quick too, to the gentleman proposing this, if you're hearing nothing else tonight from the town, from the residents, from the boards, this is certainly going to grow. I think, to the gentleman who's correct, I think you're going to see a much larger crowd as people do find out about this. And really, this project is proposed, in my opinion, and kind of what I'm hearing from my neighbors, is it's simply too large in size and scale. buildings are physically too large, too close, population, densities, a little bit high. You know, knowing that, if nothing else, you hear that from the town of Abington, you can kind of go back and look at the drawing board again. I don't think these questions or concerns are gonna go away. They're certainly not gonna go away from my department.
No, I sincerely appreciate, everybody's comments, everybody's concern. Our team will go back, we'll take a look at it. We would like to work with the town of Abington and the different boards. And, we're not trying to jam anything down anybody's throat. We're not trying to say, hey, look, this is a monster of a project, or we think it's a good project. And we're going to stand by what we've designed and what we've put forth. It's what the town, requested. When you put your zoning bylaw together, this is what you guys asked for. You wanted a dense project next to the train station. So.
Yes, it did.
Yes, it did.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I understand. Yeah, and I don't want to get into a big debate now, but we'll certainly take a look at what you've done, what you've said, and we'll take that back to to the team, and we'll rethink this thing and come back to you. And,
I'm going to step in now as chair and say, okay. I'm going to ask, I'm going to close the hearing. Motion to close the hearing.
No.
Comment, please.
Close the hearing. Close the hearing, but we're going to continue it.
Can I just make one comment?
One more
My name
comment.
is Linda Holtz, 1009 Plymouth Street. I want you all to consider, we have something going on with our police, a shortage, the always leaving. The chief of fire just said, we don't have enough. If there's a fire over here and a fire over there, what are we gonna do? Rethink some of this. I left Dorchester 2.5 years ago from a home for 39 years because they were rebuilding in condos and units and so forth. And then I come here and now I have 144 units going behind me, and we weren't allowed to, they weren't allowed to have access to going up Summer Street, all going through the senior center, but the dog park wasn't allowed, and now this may be allowed. And the traffic surveys that you're doing, there's no way you're doing them, because there is tons of traffic. And you watch when 144 units start coming out onto Plymouth Street, and they're saying 600 cars or 500 cars a day. And now you're gonna have how many cars coming out? And they're gonna be going to 58 or 18. You don't have safety service for what you already have. You have a police department that's falling apart, and now you have a fire department that is not gonna be able to handle more people. And then the taxes. Well, yeah, you can say, okay, we'll get another fire chief, another, another fireman or something, and you're hiring that, and then our taxes as well. I'm already paying.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, okay.
So I want you to consider how bringing all this in, you can't even accommodate what you have.
Yeah, we appreciate your comment.
Okay.
What we're going to do with consultants, we'd like to continue, well, I'm going to ask for a motion to continue this hearing until September. We don't meet in August. And I think by September, we'll go through the public notification process so everyone will hear about this. I think by the time of our September meeting, which is the first, is it the second Monday?
Second Monday because of Labor Day.
Second Monday because of Labor Day. This will give you folks ample time to have your traffic study done and be able to answer these public comments and do some public outreach. And so we're asking the consultants to go along with a continuance till the second Monday in September. Jeff made the motion.
Mr. Chairman, can we work directly with the consultants, or do we need to work through the town?
You need to send stuff through now.
Right, but will we be able to communicate during the time?
Yes.
Are you going to need multiple copies of the traffic study? Send to me now, and I need more about our motions.
Okay.
No specific comments.
All right, Jeff has made the motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second. So we had a motion to continue this to the first meeting in September, which will be the second Monday in September.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Can
Oh,
I make a comment before we vote?
Okay.
A lot of the same concerns was brought up by the town's consultant, Beal and Thomas. He just didn't read through one by one by one, but a lot of the same concerns that everybody else had, they had. So they're gonna be addressed one way or the other.
We appreciate your comments and your participation, and I guess we'll look forward to seeing you in September on this.
I'm gonna take the vote.
Take a 5-minute break.
You're gonna take the vote. Gonna take the vote.
Vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Is it just meeting after meeting now? What
Yes.
is the
Yes.
steps? Is that-
Yes.
Sorry, you're still new to town.
Yeah.
I come from like a town that has mayors and stuff, so it's just keep having mayors, just keep having another meeting.
Yes, they're all public hearings. Anybody's welcome.
Thank you.
Actually, surprisingly, that really could have gotten, I mean, how many times has it gotten nuts? People have just been like waiting pitchforks and flames. So they're not too far away. If they can get everybody in a room, let everybody scream, and I think they'll get a lot resolved.
I think they need to make Summer Street one way.
What you say?
You need to make Summer Street one way. It's too much
I think
around
either
the
way,
area. It's too narrow.
they're gonna have to get involved with a road that they don't own, and they're gonna have to modify it. I can't see how. And it's only, basically, it does only have one way out.
So, and I think the exit for this one, you have to be right turn only. You can't send them up to 58. It's gonna be too nuts.
Going that direction.
They're right. They got 600 cars coming out of the senior this year. And that 58, 123, like, is already in half.
Summer Street's great. That's the whole thing. You build the street straight. You ask for it.
Yeah. So there's going to be traffic calming measures in that intersection, and then.
I'm surprised the train intersection hasn't been more of an issue.
I can't believe how hot it is in here. It's dying.
Yeah. I'm thinking, they hired the architect who did this building, and I'm thinking, I hate this building.
We'd like to call the meeting back to order, so those that aren't concerned about the meeting to go off now.
Okay. Somebody want to know if we get through the
The problem with it is there's so much information it's not correct.
Yeah, that is a big problem. There's a lot of information.
What?
That people just put out there that isn't right, you know? It's hard, I get it.
It's being 6:30, public hearing, definitive subdivision, 392 Randolph Street. Order.
Okay.
Are we ready? Okay. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering Solutions, representing John and Eileen Kavanaugh, who are the applicant and owners for 392 Randolph Street. They are here tonight, as is Roger Dow, who is legal counsel for the applicant. I'm going to go ahead and make this brief and do everybody a favor. For legal tear sheets right here for the record. So the proposed project is technically, I guess, a 3-lot subdivision where the land currently, let me turn to the right page here.
Eric, while you're getting that ready, let me just read this. You can go right ahead. The Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, June 3rd, 2019, at Abington Town Hall, 500 Glenowitz Way, at 6:30 p.m. on a definitive subdivision plan application entitled Definitive Subdivision Plans for 392 Randolph Street, prepared for John J. and Eileen Kavanaugh by Strong Point Engineering Group, 340 Manley Street, Unit 2, West Bridgewater, Mass. 02379. The plan is dated April 24th, 2019. The property is owned by Eileen and John Kavanaugh, 392 Randolph Street, Abington, Mass. 02351. The property is located on Assessors Map 51, Lot 88. The hearing will be held at Abington Town Hall, 5 Glenwood
Bless you.
Way. Plans may be viewed at the office of Town Clerk and at Abington Town Hall, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And B. Smith Chairman, advertised in the Brockton Enterprise, May 20th and May 22nd.
Excellent. No problem. So the existing property contains one single-family dwelling, and it does, which fronts on Randolph Street. And it does have a small leg that comes back and fronts to about a 40-foot width on Dorsey Street. So the proposal is, I guess, technically a 3-lot subdivision, where we will create essentially a paper street, sort of a glorified common drive is what we're proposing, to come off Dorsey and service 2 new lots. The existing dwelling will remain and will continue to front on Randolph Street. So in essence, it's a 3-lot subdivision. It's more sort of 2 lots and an A&R. We could have cut off the front lot through an A&R process. We said, let's just combine it all and get it done at once. We submitted a sketch plan to this board. I think we were before you. It was either March or April of this year. The finished product is very much in line with what you saw on that sketch plan. At the time that we submitted the sketch plan, we requested a small number of waivers, which were mostly with regard to the roadway construction requirements to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down, but dumb it down. All of those waiver requests carry through with the exception of vertical granite curbing. We had originally asked to remove vertical granite curbing. I don't think this board was in favor of it, is what was reported to me, so we put it back on the plan. The only place where we have omitted it from the plan is the very end of the hammerhead. And the reason for that is for snow storage. So that way, when we plow, we can come through and just push the snow right to the back and keep it in the right-of-way, sort of outside of the paved area. Aside from that, waivers that we've requested are to have a hammerhead instead of a right-of-way turnaround. Requirement for a 20-foot minimum easement shall be required at the end of the cul-de-sac. We requested a waiver from that because we're not going with a cul-de-sac. We've requested a waiver for sidewalk. We don't believe that this is going to necessarily be warranted on a street of this service level. And then a waiver just for one of the radii at the connection to Dorsey Street. We couldn't make 20 feet, so we brought it to 5. We have received comment from PMP's office on this, and I know they have a representative here tonight. Unfortunately, I think there was a lack of communication. We just received the comments from them at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Although the letter was dated the 20th, I think it was just a lack of pushing paper around. But nonetheless, we're prepared to talk about anything we have to, but I can kind of summarize it. I would say probably 85 to 90% of the comments in here are mostly notational things that need to be added to the plans. We have no issue with any of those. In fact, the rest of the comments that are design-related, we've gone through those. I have no reason to think that we can't make that work. We fully intend to comply. Primary among them is some comments on the drainage. We have not proposed any closed drainage system in this roadway as of right now, what's shown on the plans, because it's not subject to Mass State stormwater standards. We didn't necessarily feel that was required. PMP's comments seem to want something, and I've spoken with the applicant about it. We don't disagree. We actually think it's a good idea, so we intend to get that on the plan. So our intention here tonight, we know we're not in a position to close, but we wanted to come present to the board, get any additional comments you may have on top of PMP's comments. Our plan for leaving here is to address all of PMP's comments and hopefully work with their office directly to do that, incorporate any comments this board may have, and come back to you with a set of plans that hopefully we can approve and sign. Just get it done quickly. So I won't take any more of your time. I'll go your direction.
What we'll do is, we have an open hearing, so we're going to have to let the public speak first, and then we'll get some more time. Name and address.
Michael Moon, 63 Mulberry Drive. I'm here on behalf of my daughter who lives at 25 Taylor Street. The property backs right up to Mr. Kavanaugh. We've spoken. My biggest concern is right now, and he knows about it, the water flows down at a rapid rate. It's already washed out. We're planting bed a couple of times and we'll move on. But there's only so much we can do with the regulations now, or the stormwater regulations that they have. The new construction must take care of the water. And I don't know what you have for drainage, but I'm not sure if a retention area might be needed, but it is washing out, and once these houses are there, you might have more of a flat surface. You run it down, and she doesn't have water in her cellar now, and we're trying to avoid it. We're not really opposed to this, we just want to make sure that the water is taken care of.
Sure. And that's something that I've actually spoken with the owners about. I wasn't necessarily aware of that condition until we talked about it, but we are now. So what we intend to do is propose some sort of a measure to just divert flow from going onto the neighbor's property. We are going to install closed drainage at the intersection of Dorsey Street and the proposed way. So ideally, we will be diverting any surface runoff to that paved roadway, let it enter the closed drainage and be on its way. So it avoids exasperating any existing condition that's there.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Hi, Walter Berry, 10 Crossley Street. In the letter that was submitted to the town, the waivers, the statement here says lot 3 will contain the existing single-family house with frontage on Randolph Street. And looking at the top of the drawing package, there's a different lot number that designates the frontage on Randolph Street. Is that an error?
Yeah, that is likely just an error. In fact, let me tell you what.
You get the right lot?
Lot 1 is on Randolph.
Yeah, we're calling this lot 1 and perhaps on the, no, it is lot 1 on Randolph.
Right, well, in this letter here, it says lot 3 was going to be.
Like we just, the text of the letter.
Yeah, okay.
We can correct that, no problem.
All right. Another comment here, on sheet drawing C4. On the lower right side corner, you have note. On the lower right side, you have note right here, yeah. Note 1. Erosion controls depicted, you have it listed as part of the town of Franklin, Mass. Is that an error, or is it something that we don't know about?
No, again, it's a standard note that we have, likely a cut and paste from another project that we've done. We'll take care of that error.
Okay, one more. On the lower left notes on that same drawing, note number 4, installation of utilities, according to the town of Weymouth.
My fault. We will take care of that as well.
I found these meeting minor discrepancies, but I'm just curious now, is there something else that I have not covered?
Nope.
Okay. Nope. All right, one of the other things I'd like to do is get a set of these drawings from Strong Arm. I'll be more than happy to go down to your facility at some point in the future and get my own copy.
I will need to discuss with the applicant. If the applicant authorizes me to do so, I can give them to you directly. Otherwise, they are available as public record at the planning board's office, and you can get copies there.
Okay, I don't planning board has.
Maybe at the town clerk's office or planning board.
$7 a
Copies of
sheet.
that size drawing?
$7 a sheet, just to let you know.
I'm not
Okay.
running money. I just want a copy of the original drawing. So like what, a D size?
This size.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go to the planning board. Okay? Okay, all right, good, fine. Yes, sir.
My name is Carl Bryant, 414 Randolph Street. And we talk about water for years. I've been living in Abington for almost 17 years. And I've had a water issue with water running across my yard going towards the Kavanaughs. And ever since the new project in the back, I don't know how we're gonna fix. I think the water issue should be fixed before it gets to my house, because whatever water comes across my house goes to his house, and then it goes to John's house, and it goes downhill. It goes downhill. I think the issue needs to be looked at before that whole Murphy Street entrance into the new complex. And Walter has presented in a different town meeting, the whole area flooded. Tons of water. So the water is coming our way from that particular area. So, you know, I have a water issue too, and it's not something that I can control because I'm getting water from somebody else, and it just kind of goes downhill to everybody else. So, you know, if there's something that needs to be done, it needs to be done closer to the source of the problem.
Through the chair, if I may. I can't say I necessarily disagree. I'm not familiar with the Murphy Street project. I don't know, I believe it's recent, I don't know if it's finalized.
Yeah, it's up behind that big warehouse you see on 139. There's a subdivision in behind there.
Okay. And the status of that subdivision, are they done with it?
No, they're still working on it.
So they're still working on it. So that may be something, just thinking out loud, that it's appropriate for the planning board's review engineers to review on the as-built condition of that to see if their drainage system is working the way that it's supposed to be, perhaps. But certainly with regard to this site, we will, you know, we have every intention of taking a look at the existing condition and providing as many safeguards as we can to make sure that nothing gets exasperated.
You have a question? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dorothy Lockwood, 374 Main Street. I've moved down here for 40-something years. I've had water in my yard since I've lived there. It just comes down, it's just the way the land is pitched. It comes from John's yard to my yard to next door's yard. What are you gonna do about it? Nothing. It's there. It's nature. Deal with it. You know, it's the way it is. I go around building dams all over town.
I agree.
Yes, sir. 402 Randolph Street. I agree with the last two comments. It's the same thing. Water gets into Rick's yard, it goes through mine, it goes to John, works its way down, and that's just the lay of the land. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Karen O'Leary, my husband, Edward O'Leary. We live at 42 Crossley Street. As far as the water concern is, we do have problems with the water that's coming down from the Murphy properties. But we now have significant problems with the water that's coming from the property at, what is it, 392. A lot of changes has happened to the property itself. We've had a lot of debris that is put onto the property by our property line and into our property, which has caused significant water runoff, causing damage to our property, to multiple trees. We've lost trees. We've lost multiple arborvitaes. That is going to cause us, we've actually had to rebuild a fence and bring it forward because of the amount of flooding that we're having on, which is still our property. I actually have documentation and letters from the zoning department, from Marion Ryan. I have pictures that she took back in April of 2018. I have recent pictures to show the overgrowth. There's about 2 feet worth of overgrowth and debris that was put up from the landscaping property from back when they were using it out of the property back a couple of years ago. I know they have stopped within the last year, which has been greatly appreciated. But as far as the water goes, we have 3 sump pumps and a French drain. And since all this has happened, we actually now have sinkholes in our yard, which have nothing to do with Murphy Street. I have pictures. I didn't know if those could be, you know, if anybody, if that could be brought into, I think it's important. My biggest concern is that, and we have no concern, absolutely not, with the subdivision and sale of the property. Our concern is, my husband and I, this amount, which is a tremendous amount, it's the length of our property, is just full of garbage. It's ruined our property, it's ruined our trees. Who is going to be responsible to remove it? If it's sold, it's no one's responsibility. I have a letter from Marion stating that this was supposed to be taken care of over a year ago, and it never was. And I also have other things that involve kind of the same part of this situation. I just don't want to take up more time. Yeah.
You said O'Leary, is that correct?
Yes, so our property goes off at a very significant angle. And it was told by the property owners that that was not true, and that it was their property that they were dumping on, which it is absolutely true, it is our property. I have actually very specific documentation, and it should be on that. We go off to a significant angle. And they actually told me they removed our marker. That back in 2005, we did a survey because we put on, in addition to our house, and that marker was removed.
Okay, I might suggest, let us take a look at it. It might make the most sense to let us try to work together on this and come to a resolution so we don't take up too much of the board's time.
Right, that's not what I want to do. You know, this is, I want to be able to not take up too much time here with that. I just felt it was important to bring up some of that stuff. And it first being the water issue. We've lost trees, we lost a huge tree because of the water runoff was significant.
Well, we can certainly take a look at that and see.
That would be great. I mean, Marion has been a huge help, but I kind of feel that at this point in She Breeze, we're kind of stopped with what we can kind of finish and accomplish before the property is divided. And like I said, no problem with that. I think that's great, but we want to make sure things are taken care of before that occurs.
Okay, let's talk about it soon.
All right, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll close the public portion.
Can we ask questions to the board?
Very nice. Yes, I will. Thank you.
Is Mr. or Mrs. Mortimer here? People who live next to the entrance to the driveway? No? What?
If they waited so long, they had to leave.
Oh,
They were here waiting for 2 hours.
He was up last Friday and looked at the plans.
And what did they have to?
His concern is what's going to be built on those 2 lots. I explained to him that nothing is shown on the lots, but anything other than a single-family house would need to go to the zoning board for multi-family use, and that he would, again, be notified. He doesn't want multi-families there. He's very concerned about that.
Was he concerned about the closeness of the driveway to his driveway?
He didn't say anything about that. His biggest concern, he said he didn't oppose it, it's what's going to get built there.
All right.
Excuse me, on that same note, I mean, I suppose that I am right there, my property, my backyard. I mean, I would be concerned about a 2-level home or a multi-family home. That would be like encroaching into my property. So I don't know, I've seen the plans, and I think the plans are great, but it doesn't really specify where the house is.
If I may, through the chair, in a situation like this, the overall ultimate house design that gets built there is kind of left up to the eventual builder. But what the plans do is they do give strict parameters based on the zoning of where that house can be situated, the bounds they can be. Furthermore, there are use regulations, which I think Liz mentioned. Multifamily requires additional relief, which would have to go before the ZBA and annually be notified. There are height regulations for the houses on the zoning, so whatever was built there would need to comply with that. Or it can go to the ZBA for relief, in which you would be notified. I can tell you, our immediate plan does not have anything to do with any of that. What we envision is single-family dwellings in keeping with what's allowed under the zoning bylaw. My personal opinion is if you try to do anything that wasn't allowed under the zoning bylaw on these lots, you probably have a pretty good uphill battle on your hands. So hopefully that gives a little bit of peace of mind.
Yeah, thank you.
And also, Ed Jacobs is here from PMP, and I'm sorry I didn't recognize you over there. But, any comments that you'd like to make?
No, I think Eric covered everything. He is right. We had a little snafu at our office, and for some reason, he's gotten everybody's hands late, but Eric did have a chance to look at him, and he's agreed to make the changes that we came up with, so I'm just looking forward to working with him, and we'll be here at the next meeting.
Yeah, and again, I don't see, we went through them all, I don't see anything that strikes me as a concern or inappropriate, so I think we're in good shape.
Yep.
Back to Rick.
My only other real concern is that there's some sort of screening or buffering put in between the lot line and the Crosley Street neighbors.
The lot line.
If the long one.
This one down here.
I know it's really open right now, but there's no houses right there, and if you put 2 houses in there, it's gonna feel a lot more crowded, whether or not that's legit or not,
Can
but
you
it's,
show me where
it's going to feel.
specifically, would that be behind my property?
Yes,
According to the crosswalk?
that's
Okay.
So, I'd like to strongly encourage there to be some sort of screening or visual relief
And what would
along
that
the
entail?
agreed-upon property line. It could be arborvitae's, although I'm not a fan of them. There could be other sort of trees, bushes, pines.
Is perhaps a fence acceptable to the board? Is that something that they've looked at in the past?
I mean, a 6-foot fence is not gonna do much to distract from a 30-foot home, but it'd be a start.
Excuse me. No, we can take a look at it on our.
Something like that would be so appreciated.
Yeah, we can take care of that, no problem.
So,
What I'd like to do is, any other questions on the board? Continue the hearing to July 1st, and we'll give you time for you to get things together and talk to the neighbors.
I suspect that will be
So motion to continue the hearing.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Through council, just a request, the next meeting to confirm is on July 1st.
Yes.
And is it possible, as part of the continuance, to close the evidentiary part of the hearing now, so that when we come back, we're only focused on the revisions that that have been requested of us?
I think you guys need to work with some of the neighbors and before we would make that decision.
Sure, won't take quite as long as you probably have a lot of answers. And the only other thing to put into the record, the Abington Public Works memorandum, the Abington Sewer Department has received a request for information regarding the planning board hearing scheduled for June 3rd, 2019, and has following comments. 392 Randolph Street, this proposal located on Civic Map 51. Plan 51, Lot 88 is subject to system development fees that must be paid to this office prior to the building permit sign-off. So, and that's the figure on there, if you want to write it down. Sure. Right there. He's going to give it back.
Taxes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, is that going to be a private way?
Yes, it is.
It will be a private way?
Yes, I should have mentioned that. That is proposed to be a private way, so what would happen is it would be maintained by small homeowners.
Okay, sewer and all that, is that going to be tied in as well?
Yeah, we're proposing to connect to municipal sewer and water. And we have actually, we've discussed our connections with water and sewer. They've indicated to us verbally that they're okay with it. One of PMP's comments is to get a written confirmation of that, so we will get that provided to PMP.
So on the motion to continue the hearing to July 1st, someone want to make that made? Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for
Appreciate
that.
it.
Appreciate it.
On the zoning board of appeals, board members. Oh, Dan, yeah, we're going to do
We got to
that.
close the meeting and then open another meeting.
All right,
Yeah,
so,
we'll-
minutes?
Anything on the zoning board that you,
I didn't see that.
Nice job.
anything on the zoning?
No, it's
Yeah, that's fine.
one thing on it.
The other, also, on reorganization of the board, which we didn't take up because everybody wasn't here. What is your pleasure?
I would make a motion, we keep the organization the same.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Any other motion? All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Give me 1 second, my agenda has disappeared.
Approval, I got an extra one.
Oh, there we go, thank you.
Approval of the minutes of March 4th, 2019.
For some reason, I haven't seen them.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I didn't
They
think I
were
saw
in
it
the
either.
previous package, the one that got
Oh.
lost in the day.
yes.
I went through them today looking for them. I don't know what happened. I couldn't.
Went
find them.
alone.
Could not find them.
All right, do you want me to put it on for the next agenda?
Sure.
We'll do the same with the April 1st
Yeah.
one, okay?
Yeah, I didn't see any minutes.
No worries.
And
I looked for them too, because I knew it was coming
there's a
up.
sketch plan that you all have on Winterwood subdivision on Dale Street. Do you have any comments at all on that?
Yes.
You all have the sketches? Option 2 looks great. I'd hate to own lot 3, 4, 2.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This isn't solving the 600-foot problem. It's a 600-foot dead end with another 600-foot dead end on it. And
I agree. Yeah. And
it's one way in, one way out. That's the problem. You can put as many loops in as you want. It's still one way in, one way out.
that's correct.
We've been down this road before.
Yes, we have.
Not quite as bad.
Yeah, this is pretty awful.
Only
Too much property on it.
suggestion that I might have is what we did at the Gables. We end up with 2 roads that are going in, so that it's wider, so if something happens, and you can go up and look at the, are you all familiar with the Gables? Yeah. That's what we did, and I would agree totally with Rick that, it's more than 600 feet, and something needs to be done. So if it was a double-barreled road coming in off Dale Street, would that be acceptable to do that, or you end up doing something different?
Yeah, I mean, if there was an emergency, you'd have to go through wetlands and swamps and rivers to get to.
Oh, you're not
Dale
gonna
and-
get there?
Yeah, just.
No, and that would be, and I don't know whether, we obviously, when we did Dale Street, Gables, we thought that would mitigate it enough, and of course, there's a lot more buildings in there than there is here. Although we did eventually get another entrance, by the way, at the
Yes.
Gables, that other little, it's just a
Little emergency.
little emergency to get them around that first section, even addition to that.
I mean, if they want to put a second entrance to Doug Alwick's house, that's fine, but they have to work that out.
Doug wouldn't like that very well.
You might sell it to him.
I don't think so.
I guess my comment is that I think we're opening a can of worms for somebody else to do the same thing.
Somebody was already here tonight.
So you'd rather not have a double-barrel road going in, Bob?
I think they need to conform to the rules and regulations. That's just my personal opinion. It's so drastic. I mean, if it was only a few houses, I might feel different, but it's a huge subdivision with one way in.
It's 1,400 feet.
It's
almost a quarter mile.
And the other comment I guess I don't have to make the other comment. Driving through Veterans Place, had I rethought that, the roads would be wider. It's definitely too narrow.
Oh, on Bedford Woods, yeah.
And no, Veterans Place.
Veterans Place.
Yeah, the one that butts up to Carriage Hill.
Right.
Road's too narrow.
Huh?
It's too narrow.
Oh, it absolutely is. We need to, that's one for you.
What's that?
On the width of the road, if you go over to Veterans Place, it's on 58, on Plymouth Street, when you're doing the zoning.
Yeah.
We can't allow that. It's just.
I get what they were trying to do because it wasn't gonna be a through street, but it's still too narrow.
Right, well, not only that, but
can go on
the
field
interesting thing is the
I'll be in on Friday.
Okay, we can go on a field trip. Oh, I will not be here on
I'm gonna see
Friday.
Glenn at 10.
All right, I won't be here on Friday.
You won't be here on Friday.
I'm going to New York.
Good for you. I'll make it the next Friday.
Okay.
The ambulance is wider than the fire entrance, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you can park on both sides of the street, and all you have to do is have a couple of cars parked there, and you're dead.
It's the worst when I notice it is after it snowed.
Yeah.
And then you park a car with a snowbank in it. It's definitely too narrow.
Yeah, so that, on the zoning. So, I'll get back to him on this anyway.
Well, do you want me to send them an email that?
Yeah, tell them that.
Neither of them are acceptable?
Yes, yeah, it's more than 600 feet.
And so that moves us finally for what you came here for tonight.
Well, I had this great speech prepared.
Because we can't afford you anymore. You stayed here too long.
Sucked up all that town meeting money.
I'm a high-priced consultant. I want to introduce myself as the former town planner.
That's right.
And I wanted to tell you that I looked through this master plan update that the Conway School did, and I think they did an excellent job. I think there was money well spent. And the board updated really the land use element of the master plan, which is key to the zoning and everything else that we're doing here. So what I found is that there's really nothing new, that this really reinforced and certified what we have done previously in terms of land use planning here. And I was really going to discuss the relationship of the master plan to the zoning bylaw. Because the zoning bylaw and the subdivision regulations are the mechanism that the town uses to implement the land use objectives of the master plan. And those basically have not changed, even with this update. They talked about trying to reestablish the North Abington and Abington business districts to try to encourage additional business development in the transit-oriented development district, which I think is key. And you heard a lot of comments today about, there's a lot of residential development. But this is an opportunity that the town has to try to encourage some convenience retail commercial uses in that district, so that this helps with the tax base of the town, certainly. So what I think I want to do is I'm talking to some key individuals about some of the zoning changes that would be appropriate, with the mind that we want to implement the land use objectives of the master plan. And so I'll be meeting with the planning board regularly, and we'll be open to comments from the public about any changes they require or they feel necessary. And then we'll take those under advisement and see where they lead to. But it's good to have this kind of forum. Now, next week, we're having another meeting, and hopefully we'll get a turnout, some people that have some additional comments. And so I'm going to be at your beck and call for the next several months anyway, so it'll be good working with you, and I look forward to it.
Any questions from Dan, for Dan?
What's this meeting next week?
There's a hearing again on Tuesday night, 7:30, to hear additional comments on the zoning bylaw. And that's been advertised, I assume, right, Liz?
For our television audience.
I guess I have to put it on Facebook.
Yeah, where was it advertised?
For our television audience, Dan?
Yeah.
What?
It's
Send Sean to the
7:30,
board.
7:30,
Put it on the
June
website.
11th, at this meeting place, next week,
Select,
7:30.
big meeting room, okay.
And there's the handouts over there, and those got posted in a lot of different places around town. Trukey's, the bank,
All the places I don't go.
exactly. I can't
Rick,
help
if
if
you
you're
wanna put it on
peapod and doing
Facebook,
electronic.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab a notice and I'll put it up around. So, still one lingering about?
Yeah, you can do that.
What else
So,
we got?
one of the comments we heard from town council at one point, and I'm trying to remember if it was during when I was working on the signed bylaw committee, or if it was when she came to talk to us, was that she felt our zoning bylaws were really disorganized and jagged and kind of all over the place at times, and could use a good overhaul. I don't know if, were you?
I was unaware of that until I heard you running for a planning board. That was the first I heard about it, on TV.
All right.
But I have never heard anyone from council say that they were upset with our bylaws. I've had other meetings with them, and they have not expressed that to me.
Actually, our bylaws were updated.
They have, and we continually change them because.
I think that's part of the problem, is we're continually changing them and they're starting to get ragged and uneven. Can we ask her to specify what?
That'd be very worthwhile.
Would be,
Who is this now?
what's their town
Was
council's?
it Amy Questle that you spoke with?
Yes. Amy Questle, one of our town council.
All right, I'd like to hear specifically what she has in mind.
We were redoing our sign bylaw
Yeah.
last year. And at one point, she had said that just going through our bylaws, they're a bit of a disorganized jumble at times. So if we can get some specifics, we can see about addressing them.
I'll need her number to get in contact with her.
Anything else to be brought before the meeting?
Just that, I sent everybody an email about what might be a good date. And I only heard from Wayne if we were to have a meeting in July or August. Should an application for a retail marijuana store fall out of the sky?
2 of them?
Gonna have samples.
I'm only being asked about one.
Which one?
I know there could be 2, not the one that was in the news.
Correct.
One on the Weymouth line there. But the one?
And they're not the only ones who've asked, so.
Could we do that first Monday of the month in that time period if we had to? So I'm not
So
taking,
July 29th, 30th, the 31st, or August 19th, was what the chairman came back with, were good dates. Does anybody have a vacation planned, or?
I would go for August 19th.
Yeah.
August 19th, Bob? Let's check in his calendar.
I don't really care.
What's that intersection?
I don't have a preference.
What's that intersection?
Oh, yeah, the Veterans Place. It's not an intersection, it's,
It's between Route 58 and Route
123.
and Summer Street.
yes. It's on the left if you're
It's on the
leaving.
left, you can go in there.
You go past.
So one of those dates work for anybody, or
August
what?
19th, where's,
Okay.
What?
August 19th?
August 19th?
Only if we have to?
Only if we have to.
Oh, believe me, my friend, only if we have to.
Would it happen, we'd wait until we wouldn't do anything in July?
Yeah, that would be good.
July's no good? August is,
So August will be the only date that you guys are available.
I can
not
probably
the
do one of
July.
those July dates if it works, if I need to.
If we absolutely had to do it, something in July, I suppose.
yeah, 8/15/22/99. Whatever,
Are you doing this thinking that it's gonna be a crazy hearing, so it's just gonna be that?
that's all it would be.
Is that what you? okay.
Yes.
Can't be any crazier than what we had tonight.
Please?
Can't be any crazier than what we had tonight, and we had a full agenda.
You want to
Guess is my comment.
just piggyback that right onto that September meeting?
No,
Yeah, I think we should do it both on the same night.
No.
Why not?
no.
So the 19th is, we can put that in there.
Okay.
Anything further? Yes.
My colleague, I'm putting on my old colleague planning council hat, but Liz was kind enough to send this out, Laurie Muncy and Lisa Sullivan. We're wondering if we could place an item on the upcoming planning board agenda to discuss the community outreach survey that OCPC, Old Colony Planning Council, is doing for OCPC is doing a housing production plan for the town. Thus be a great opportunity to include survey questions to assist you with public input for the master plan that you're currently working on. We could include a few questions. Anyway, if anyone has any comments on this, you've got the email. You can send it along to Laurie.
I didn't send him the email, I just printed it out for him, but I will send the email.
Yeah, Liz will send you Laurie's email at our office, Old Colony Planning Council's office. And, it'd be great if Laurie and Lisa asked me specifically to ask you folks for comments on this, so please. I did send it to some of you, and I know Liz sent it to you too.
I just hit delete.
So you're gonna send us an online, and we're gonna answer it online?
If it isn't a free
Is
cup
that
of
what you're
coffee.
gonna
Just
do?
for your comments on the survey and stuff like
It's gonna be online, or you wanna?
Not a huge.
that. We'll send it out to you,
Spend all
yeah.
my day with my face buried in my email.
Not
It's good
to
that we're-
take the survey, but to just comment on it.
Just to comment on the survey that the ladies are doing. It's
Any
good that
other-
Abington's doing housing production.
Anything other come before the board?
Just to backtrack for 1 minute, we had a quick discussion last meeting about Century Estates and Veterans Place and the road conditions. How did we leave that?
Both contractors will get a hold of the highways, Public Works Director and decide what they want to do. The attorney for Rosen was here and said that he would get in touch with them, and the other contractor was here for Veterans Place on something else, and he said he would, when he's going to do the resurface, not the resurface, but the final coat, and at the same time, he'd talk with them and work that out. It's just two small patches on Route 58. As far as the other one's concerned, a lot of that road was broken up long before the contractor got there.
Dorsey?
Not Dorsey, but the other, Cynthia, is it?
Cynthia Road.
Yeah. Because even before the project started, the people up there came and said, the road's a mess now. And we got a letter from Highway saying that it was natural wear and tear and had nothing to do with them.
Okay. Just because since we got the actual letter from him, and he seems pretty insistent that it's the developers who need to be held accountable, I just wanted to
Well,
make sure
I
that
think
we were
that's-
supporting our DPW
Yeah,
commissioner.
and he's got to,
Do you want me to send him an email that he should expect some contact from him?
yes, and also give them their contact numbers, and they can both work it out.
Both subdivision owners seem to be willing to accommodate what we need, so hopefully if the two of them get together, the three of them get together, they can work it out.
Well, I've asked this 3 times, how about now? Ready to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made,
I'll second
seconded. Any further discussion? And there being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you.